This is the Northern Ireland.
Okay. Okay, I would inform those in attendance, anybody in the public gallery, can use mobile devices through the Wi-Fi connection, and all devices should be muted. Password details are available on the gallery rules for anyone wanting to connect to the Assembly's Wi-Fi network. 3G and 4G should not be used, and no recordings or photographs are to be taken. Members are also asked to ensure that their electronic devices are switched to mute mode to ensure quality of sound recording. Okay, so we're going to move on to any apologies first of all. I think there were there was an indication from Paul that he may be delayed due to a funeral, but hopefully he will arrive. I think everybody else is present. Okay, we are going to shortly invite the Minister to come in. That session will be recorded by Hansard, so all members should be aware that your electronic devices and mobile devices should be turned off to ensure the quality of sound recording. Whilst the committee is in session, it does interfere with the sound transmission. There are a number of papers within your papers for today. Correspondence from the PSNI, which is tabled separately, and you've received this. A briefing paper from the clerk at pages 4 to 5 of the main pack, and an email from Mr Jim Allister, a member of the committee, on pages 3 to 47 of the table papers, which includes information he has received in relation to this item. I want to turn first of all to the disclosure by Jim. First of all, I would say I do welcome the fact that you have forwarded this information to the committee. I think this is useful. I would put on record, and I'm sure it'll come as no surprise to the member, that I am a bit disappointed that we didn't get this at an earlier stage, because I do think there's a number of aspects of that which are relevant.
The reason for that's explained in the letter.
Yeah, just before I go on to that.
Well, I don't think you should make an allegation without me having the opportunity to explain. The covering email which I sent indicates that when I started to prepare for this meeting and did a contrast between the emails as published in the Irish News and the emails which had been emailed to my office, the tweets that were emailed to my office, I discovered there were some differences. Whereupon I thought, in the interest of openness and transparency, I should relay that to the committee, which I duly did.
And I thank the member for jumping in with his explanation before I expressed why I was disappointed. But I'm a little bit disappointed for a number of reasons. And the member has outlined in your letter the reasons why you didn't disclose this.
Because I didn't know there was anything different.
And I'm about to go on to indicate, I think in the first instance, I had expressed to the committee that it was clear from the Irish News that what they had printed was redacted. And we had a conversation in this committee about seeking the full transcript, and we had agreed to write to the Irish News and the BBC for that full transcript. At no point during that discussion did you, Jim, indicate that you were in possession of the full transcript of that. Well, albeit that I think it is a good thing that this is now forwarded to us, but you did receive this on the 17th of August.
Yes, I only became aware recently that there was any discrepancy between what had been sent to me and what was in the Irish News when I started to prepare for this meeting, and I then expeditiously released it to the committee. My responsibility only runs from date of knowledge.
And Jim, you will have your views on this. I'm entitled to express my views on this. And I do think that, even if there was a chance that you would have received a fuller copy, I do think that would have been something that you could have told this committee as we were discussing the full transcript. You did know that you'd received correspondence.
But I didn't know it was different.
Transcript, and you didn't tell us that you'd
because
received that.
The Irish News purported to indicate that this was the full transcript of messages exchanged before the hearing. So I assumed that I had been sent the same as they had been sent. I was only preparing for this. I discovered, there's a slight difference here and there. Not saying there's significant, some might be. Don't think so. And once I had that knowledge, I then released to this committee the transcripts, which I believed at that point they already had, because they had the Irish News, as I say, my responsibility only dates from my knowledge.
I think, Jim, and we've heard your explanation, and we've heard, I think, your view that your responsibility only starts at the point. I am entitled as chairperson to say a number of things. I think, first of all, you received correspondence from Jamie Bryson on the 17th of August.
Yes.
Or your assistant. We were talking about private correspondence from Jamie Bryson to members of the committee and to the chair of the committee. I believe that was relevant and it could have been said at the time. I think, secondly, it wasn't a case that it was a full transcript in the Irish News. This committee had a discussion and it was stated in the Irish News that there were a redacted or there was excerpts from that. I had raised concern that it wasn't the full transcript. And I think at that point it would have been prudent for you to check your transcript against that at that time.
I don't think it's a full transcript either, I might say.
And I'm going to raise that as well because I don't think it is either.
No.
So in relation to this information, I do think it is useful for a number of reasons. First of all, it includes a second reference to Much Miller, which was not covered by the Irish News. And I would ask members to take a look at that part of the Minister coming in, which appears then on page 37 of that disclosure from Jim, which we received yesterday. It's part of the tabled pack. So there is a second reference to Much Miller. The concerning thing, and Jim, this is why I was raising the issue about my disappointment about the lateness of receiving this, is that it's very clear to me looking at this that there are missing messages between pages 36 and 37 of our pack. So if members look at page 36, and I think this is very relevant to today's proceedings because the immediate message after that is in and around Much Miller and what he may or may not do in relation to the inquiry. So we look at page 36 of your pack. At the very bottom we see a message sent on the 22nd of the 9th at 22:47. When we turn the page, and I've no reason to believe, Jim, I'm sure you can confirm this, that this is the way it was sent to you.
Well, you got the email.
So if we look over onto page 37, there's a message sent, and if you look at the date, referencing Martin on the 22nd of the 9th, 2015 at 22:50, some 3 minutes later. Now, 3 minutes may not seem like an unusual period of time, but if you look at the message slightly above that, there's clearly another message which was sent by Jamie Bryson back to Thomas O'Hara, and we have not got that page or those messages.
I assure you I don't have it either.
Yep, so clearly, unfortunately, we aren't in a position to ask those, could we get those missing? But what it does indicate to me, and I think this is very concerning, is first of all, these are clearly edited. We could have predicted that they were, but these are edited. We are not getting the full transcript of what was discussed.
Yes, well, make it clear you're not suggesting.
No, absolutely not. But that in terms of the Jamie Bryson, so for the purposes of this, this is what we're taking. This is what was sent. Secondly, and sorry, just John, before I bring you in, I think the concerning thing here is that if you reference the above, the committee can do the rest. Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Immediately below that seemed to be some indication of try to get Martin to say something in the meeting, even let him see how comprehensive the document is. So as he knows, it's not bullshit. If we look down the page to the bottom where Thomas O'Hara responds, spot on, Jamie. So there's no rebuttal of that. There's no suggestion that he can't do that. And quite frankly, we don't know what else he was referencing about the committee in the messages immediate. What we do know is that Mr. Bryson has decided he's not going to share that with us. So whatever those messages are, those aren't the messages that we're seeing. So it does suggest to me that what came before that message that we are seeing was something to do with the committee, which may be relevant to both the criminal investigation, and I've highlighted this to the PSNI, but also in terms of what we will look at. There is a further section of that just before we invite the Minister in. So if we look at page 29 of that disclosure, and again this wasn't referenced in the Irish News, is that it states at the very top, again half cut off, so in pages 28 through to 29 there's clearly missing messages. So the top message then says the source, and once Cochrane realises she has been played, the damage is already done. So again, there's some suggestion about choreography or information, etc., to the committee, and we have not received those messages. Again, I think probably the most significant omission from the Irish News transcripts that we now have in terms of this disclosure actually is in and around a comment made by Jamie Bryson in relation to the identification of the source. So I would turn members to page 32. I think this is a very serious allegation or admission, and it hasn't been covered as far as I'm aware. Members can correct me if I'm wrong. So on the 22nd of September at 8:05, Jamie Bryson states, "Say OK, Judith." Now this is in reference to the source, which we've seen a half message of in the previous. So on page 31, he says, "What about my source ID?" at the very bottom, says Jamie Bryson to Thomas O'Hara. We turn the page. Thomas O'Hara says, "What was your source idea?" Jamie Bryson answers, "Say OK, Judith. I will tell the committee my source. I give them a name in confidence, brackets. Obviously any old name, but they can't check because they can't break committee confidence." So again, here's a very strong suggestion in my view that a witness is indicating that he is willing to mislead the committee as part of that investigation. And he is saying it before he has given his evidence. And that again is not rebutted. There's another suggested course by Thomas O'Hara just below that, but it is not rebutted by or said that would be inappropriate, or I would need to refer it to the chairperson. So to me, this is a very serious issue where there is potentially collusion around a witness collaborating with somebody potentially employed by Sinn Féin or by Daithí Mackay, the previous chairperson, in misleading the committee in relation to their evidence. And this, as far as I'm aware, is new to what had been reported in the Irish News. So I wanted to draw members' attention to those number of additional aspects with this disclosure. Again, we've just received this disclosure from Jim, so there may be some discussion, I think, after this and after the session of the Minister, because I know we've left him waiting, that we can decide then do we need to write out and try to find out, can we get those missing messages. So I'm not sure if any members want to make some comment on that at this stage. John?
Yes, I think it comes back to my previous point that we have members of the previous committee now involved in questioning and some form of inquiry or inquiring into what happened at the previous committee in relation to the relationship between the former chair and Jamie Bryson. I would like to know if any other previous committee members received correspondence from...
I was not a previous committee member.
I didn't suggest you were.
Sorry, I took that was...
I would like to know if any other previous committee members have received correspondence from Mr Bryson. I think that's important to know before we start anything here today. I would also like, and Mr Allister tells us that he didn't edit these emails. Okay, we have his word on that. I'm not in a position to question his word on that. But there was another, these were actually sent to Mr Allister's assistant. Did he edit them?
No, well, let me deal straight away with that. He did not. What you have is forwarded to you the email as received. You have the original email as received. It isn't extracted and cut and pasted. You have the original email, and the clerk can confirm that it was the original email that was forwarded to the office.
Yes, but that, and I'm not in a position to disagree with that, but I'm also not in a position to confirm that. And we've just had the chair of the committee going through the emails, as I would expect, but reading into emails which have been cut and edited, at what source we don't know, or for what reason we don't know. So I think we have to...
Before they got to my office.
Again, I'm not in a position to challenge you on that, but I'm not in a position to confirm that either.
Well, I presume that we can, we can get confirmation of that. I would say as well, John, I think the interesting aspect of this is that Mr Bryson, as witness to the previous DFP committee, has gone on record to say that he did not leak this information. The email was from Mr Bryson 2 days before the story run in the Irish News.
Sources.
Sorry, no, not 2 days. I think this is the night before it appears.
I think you said 17th, and I think it ran on the 19th.
The story broke on the 18th, as I understand it, and on the 19th they ran the full transcripts.
Yeah.
So as we're clear, I hope I've been as transparent about this as I can be. As my email says, on the 17th of August, late in the evening, an email account of an assistant of mine received an email purporting to be from Mr. Bryson disclosing a variety of his exchanges with Mr. Mackay and Mr. O'Hara. The next morning, the story broke in the Irish News and on BBC Nolan. The next day, the Irish News published what purported to be the full transcript. I assumed at that stage that that was a direct reflection of the same emails I had been sent. It was only when preparing for this meeting today that a compare and contrast was done and discovered that there were some discrepancies between what was purported to be the full transcript in the Irish News and what had been sent to my office. Whereupon I sent the original email received to the clerk, to the police, and to the Commissioner for Standards.
And were you not concerned whenever I had raised my concerns that we didn't get the full transcript because it was referenced in the Irish News?
I had not checked at all.
The Irish News had referenced that they were not the full transcripts, and that's why we've written it.
Sorry, no, the Irish News says on their heading, full transcript of messages.
It was subsequent, I think, to is that the 19th? Because I certainly got it from the Irish News that it was.
19th of August.
So I got it from the Irish News that it was a suggestion that those were not the full messages. I think actually in that, the first Martin O'Miller mention was not even mentioned in those full transcript sections. So that's what there was an issue. So clearly it wasn't the full.
Yeah, but the Irish News ran a story on the missing Martin O'Miller reference, which indicates they had it. But I want to be very clear with you. Immediately I knew I hadn't that the Irish News transcript was not the full transcript. I conveyed to this committee what I had.
And I have to say, I am surprised that the Irish News didn't. You know, to me, one of the most serious allegations here, one of the serious issues here, is the fact that there appears to be, and again, you know, making it very clear that we're not coming to any conclusions on this, but both parties seem to have accepted this as a true and accurate account of the transcript. And within that transcript, there seems to be a very clear collusion or conversation about misleading a committee during an inquiry. We talked a lot about the democratic accountability and the role of these committees, and it should be taken very, very seriously. And I think that's a very serious allegation. Again, I have raised that with the PSNI to say that, you know, this is something that should be looked at, and I think that is new in terms of our discussions of this as well. Not sure if members have anything else you want to add. Sorry, I think Paul had just got in before you.
Just for clarification, I appreciate there has been for those of us who were present at that time and were on the Finance Committee, did we receive any communication? Well, I'm a minnow in a very small pond, or a very big pond, I should say, and as a consequence, I can verify I received no communication from the said Mr. Bryson.
Yeah. Okay.
Claire, is there anything around the legal advice, particularly you correctly referred to this communication that says from Jamie Bryson to Thomas G. O'Hara saying, say okay Judith, I will tell the committee my source, I'll give them a name in confidence, obviously any old name, but they can't check because they can't break committee confidence. Is there anything? This is very concerning in terms of very serious crime, which I understand to be malfeasance in public office. And I think there is a major questions. Judith Cochran seems to be referred to on a number of occasions, and I'm not sure what the nature of this relationship was that the former member had. And I think there is a role for investigation if there was any inappropriate relationship, and what is the documents that they're referring to? I'm referring to any inappropriate relationship with a potential witness to the committee.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. And that is precisely, you know, why I've already raised it with the PSNI. I do think that suggests, and particularly the fact that it wasn't rebutted. So if Daithí Mackay was, or Thomas O'Hara was acting on behalf of Daithí Mackay, I have no reason to believe from this that he wasn't, but that will be fully investigated. But if he was, there certainly wasn't a rebuttal within that to this would be inappropriate, this cannot happen, or you must tell the truth to the committee. There was a suggestion about another pathway, but that wasn't responded to, and the term of the source, as talked about, does seem to come up, including in a missing section, which I think is interesting as well, and deeply concerning. So, Katrina?
Yeah, just I think John raised some very relevant points in relation to potential witnesses questioning other witnesses, and I just think the committee need to have cognizance of that. And also, just to put on record, at the meetings we had in August, I recommended and proposed that we let the Commissioner for Complaints do their job rather than the political witch hunt that happened on those at those meetings, and also suggested that all other members of the committee and any other members who had received any correspondence should also be part of that inquiry. And now we find that Jim Allister and maybe other people here or in a previous committee are getting correspondence. So I just want to put... Excuse me, I didn't interrupt you. So I just am very uncomfortable at the way this has all been handled, and I'd just like to put that in record and express my disappointment that I wasn't supported when I made that proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Chair,
And
just
I
to
would-
build point of clarity, sorry.
Yes.
It's been suggested that perhaps members of the current committee, other members of the committee may have received correspondence. Let me be clear, I have received absolutely nothing in relation to this. And do you, Chair, wish to check with everybody that we haven't received correspondence?
Well,
because maybe that will clarify something as well.
I've indicated to everybody, and I will do this again very shortly when we invite the Minister to take his seat, that it's up to all members to keep themselves right in relation to this. So members are fully aware of the potential conflicts of interest, etc. And members should then declare that at the appropriate time if you feel that there's any issue. Also be aware, and at this point I would invite the Minister to take a seat because I want to deal with the police correspondence in relation to this as part of the preamble to the questions being asked in order to keep everybody right in relation to this. So, as members are aware, we have received correspondence from the PSNI about the ongoing criminal investigation. And picking up on Katrina's point, you're absolutely right. We had this discussion within this committee, and this committee has agreed that the appropriate person to carry out this investigation is the Commissioner for Standards and Privileges, and I know there's a number of other issues there. In addition to that, we understand that the Commissioner has suspended his investigation because of the ongoing police investigation. So what this committee agreed to do, and just for absolute clarity's sake, what we agreed to do was that we would invite you along. We wouldn't carry out an inquiry. We don't have terms of reference for an inquiry around this. But we would simply extend to you, as Minister and current Minister of the Finance Committee, an opportunity to come along. You'd made a number of statements in the media in relation to what you knew, or more accurately, what you didn't know around all of this. So we felt that it would be appropriate to give you the opportunity to come along today and to speak to us about that and put on record your position on a range of these issues. I would say to all members to be cognizant of the fact that there are ongoing criminal investigations. There's advice here from the PSNI to be cognizant of that from Serious Crime Branch. And we understand that investigation is, of course, at an early stage, and we don't have any information around that, so it's not on the basis of any detailed information, but there is that ongoing investigation, and members should be aware of that. So when members are asking questions, I would ask everybody to refrain from drawing conclusions, because the case has not been investigated and all of the evidence weighed. And also to refrain from, if possible, badgering the witness. If members, and I want to give all members an opportunity to speak to and ask questions.
Katrina Ryan, you're talking about badgering witness, right?
I will not, as chair, allow questions to be asked repeatedly to the point of badgering the witness. I want everything to be carried out with decorum. So just as long as
Sorry,
members
just a
aware
bit of
that the
clarification. Presumably it's not a witness, it's the Minister.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Caithfirní Cór Garmaigad is in Curru. Thanks, Madam Chairwoman, for the invite. We have a couple of officials outside doing hard time, waiting to address the committee at 3 o'clock. Why don't we
And I
let
will
them go?
apologise.
Why don't we let them go today, and we'll return to rates and budgets, because I think we're going to have a really good conversation. I don't think it's going to be over in an hour, so it would be unfair. Unless you're determined. Are you determined to speak about rates and budgets? I mean, just how determined a crew are you?
I think
Public
members'
accounts did 10
preference.
hours last week in Dublin.
So
Members' preference was to talk about these related issues.
I think we should let the officials go, with your permission. If
Are members content with that suggestion?
Good.
Yes? Yeah.
Thank you. Would someone pass that message on? It could be out there for another hour. Thank you.
I would also say, Minister, that, again, apologies for the delay. We're obviously running significantly behind schedule.
that's okay.
Unfortunately, we did receive this correspondence from the PSNI at a very late stage, so we had to consider that.
It's a bit like being read your rights, the Miranda rights published in front of you, but no, I appreciate that. I had a good discussion with Detective Superintendent Gaddis outside. I don't envy him his particular job in trying to get the committee, never mind everybody else, to cooperate with what he desires to see. Madam Chairwoman, I was in Newcastle this morning. A wonderful day for being beside the beach, but I wanted to make sure we were here to address the committee, and I do understand these matters are complex and complicated. You're having a fight when I come in. I'm not sure what that's relating to, but maybe I'll find out as it goes on. Maybe fight's too strong. You're having a heated discussion. And Mr. Allister was holding his own, I'm glad to say, although we may return later on. Did he coach Jamie Bryson? Has Jamie Bryson been in his room?
Certainly.
And had he seen any of this correspondence? But just to catch a little bit of the correspondence, and if I may open with this, you were mentioning that another honourable mention of my good self in some of these Twitter text messages. Whether I mentioned 2 times or 200 times, I had no knowledge of this communication. I think it is, and I welcome the opportunity to come in and talk to you direct. I said this in the Assembly, said it in the media, but there's no reason why it shouldn't be said in front of the committee. I had no knowledge of the communications, no hand, act or part in the correspondence or exchange between Messrs Bryson, O'Hara and Mackay. I learned about it, went on a beautiful holiday in the Basque Country in August. Mr. Allister knows the dates, and I'm sure the exact dates, but it's about 6 weeks ago. And the first thing I did in my return was to state without any ambiguity whatsoever that I had no knowledge of this exchange. And I suppose ultimately the great public out there, that pays their money and you make your choice. But for my part, I have been very clear that I had nothing at all to do with this correspondence. I did say in the Assembly as well, worth saying here, because I think you wrote to me about any communications with Mr. Mackay or O'Hara or Bryson, that I have none. I said that in the Assembly, happy to say it again today, whether we do all have too many social media channels, but neither Twitter nor Facebook nor Snapchat nor Paul Girvin's a bit of a digital revolutionist, so you may know all the rest of the channels, but there were text messages and emails. I have no communications at all to provide you with. But I did say at the time there's a bit of party politicking going on. It is sort of amazing in a place created for politics that some people might want to speak out to the advantage of their party. So I think it goes with the territory, and I didn't take it terribly serious when my dear colleagues, Ms. Hannah and Mr. Smith, were saying, would you step aside? The only stepping I'll do will be stepping up.
I think the entire committee we'd written to you and asked, with the exception of
For the
your
record, I wasn't
colleagues.
at that meeting.
But
It was also my holiday.
no, I'm not referring to a meeting. I don't even know, was there a meeting? I'm just talking about press comments afterwards. So just get that on the record. I mean, I think, and you asked me, you were very kind, because I didn't answer the first time. You said, would you step aside? And I didn't answer the second time. I presume you were teasing me both times, because anybody who knows my commitment to this process we're involved in knows that I'm only going to be stepping up in that regard. Can I say one other thing about Mr. Mackay? And I did miss some of the latest iterations to the discussion. I'm sure someone will enlighten me later on.
You will.
And I'm glad, Madam Chairwoman, you have a fairly strong control over this particular committee, especially on my right, on my hard right, I see. But I'm not a hanging judge. So I won't be saying, there may be some hanging judges here, I won't make that allegation, but I'm not a hanging judge, so I won't be saying anything today which will prejudice Mr. Mackay's right to a fair hearing. Mr. Gaddis, speaking outside, said fairness will go to the heart of whatever inquiry he's involved with. Much as I respect this august gathering in committee, the PSNI inquiry in these matters is actually, I think we'll all agree, more serious than the business at hand, whether it leads to an inquiry or just a discussion or conversation with me. But I won't be saying anything that will prejudice his right to a fair hearing. So within that grounds, I'm very happy to chat with you. But if the more it can be about the Finance Minister than about Daithí McKay, the better. But I'm here to be as helpful as possible. And I don't want either to usurp the right and the role of the Assembly Standards Commissioner. There's actually two on this particular case. Shows you how complex it is, the Welsh Commissioner and our local Commissioner. And they have stood aside while the PSNI investigation into this matter continues. I don't know if Mr. Gaddis was able to give you a timeline for when that may or may not conclude. But I've also been on record as saying that no one will be more fulsome in the cooperation with the Assembly Standards Commissioner than me. But I do respect his office, and with all due respect to this committee, he's the guy that calls the shots in regard to any inquiry into this. So there may be some things you ask for which I won't be giving you, but I'll certainly be giving all and anything and any cooperation that the Assembly Standards Commissioner wants.
Okay.
Would that be a fair opening, Madam Chairman?
Thank you for that opening. I would say, clearly there are serious issues here and people are very concerned, and, it has been the case where it has been in the local newspapers, it has been out there around what had happened, and that will be for another case to look at and examine and come to judgment on. But I think, unfortunately for yourself, you have been named by a party member of Sinn Féin in that correspondence, and therefore this committee is clearly of the view that you do have questions to answer on this. We've heard you say publicly that you had nothing to do with this, but what I would want to do today would be to extend the opportunity to you to answer a series of questions. I have a number of questions I want to ask about different aspects of it. And it's really to give you an opportunity as well to put on the record, what happened. You've said that you feel that you've nothing to hide, but there are different aspects of it and nuances, and I'm sure you appreciate that. Most of the questions I have can be answered in a simple yes and no, I think. And as you've stated, there are ongoing investigations, and certainly the Minister, you are within your rights to decline to answer. So if you want to say, just for the record of this, it has been Hansarded that you are declining to answer that particular question, that would be appreciated. I'm going to run through a number of questions, and then I'm going to open it to the floor in relation to that.
Let me say first, Madam Chairwoman, I'm going to disagree with you right from the off. I have no questions to answer about this. If two guys over in the coffee room are talking about me, whatever they're involved with, someone may say I have questions to answer about that. I have no questions to answer about whatever they're talking about. There are two guys in the pub or three guys on Twitter. But I respect your right to hold a committee. That's why I'm here. But if the questions are repeated, and I am giving the long answers, but if the questions are repeated, I hope you will forgive me if I refer you back to what I just said a few minutes ago.
Absolutely, and I know that some of these will touch on your opening statement as well. So, but again, many of them are just simply yes or no. So I just wanted to ask you, did Daithí McKay inform you that he was in private contact with Jamie Bryson?
Well, wouldn't it be wonderful if life was reduced to yes or no? But in this, it's black and white, because, as I said in my opening statement, no hand, act or part, no knowledge of, no involvement with. But it would diminish the role of this great committee if I was to answer yes or no. But I think there's about 4 no's in the opening statement.
Well,
so if you want to,
it's pretty simple. You either told you or you didn't.
But it's not pretty simple if you continue to ask questions, Madam Chairwoman, because what part of no involvement with, no part in, no knowledge of, does a committee, with all due respect, not understand? So I hope the next question is not going to ask me to repeat what I said earlier. But sure, have a go.
Well, yes, what I'm trying to do, and just to make this clear again, is that this is Hansarded, and I want to afford you the opportunity to put clearly on the record in terms of all of the aspects, because we don't want to get into a situation where you're stating something about this, and we've seen it before, where there's a drip out, and I'm not saying that this will happen in this case, but I do think it is fair to you to give you an opportunity in terms of all of the aspects of
It's
this.
not only, Madam
So-
Chairwoman, it's not only Hansard, it's got out on TV
Absolutely,
in the
but
Assembly and so
for the
on.
purposes of our
Plenty-
consideration,
plenty of
because it's,
records.
on the record.
But number 2,
Okay, so you can confirm then that at no stage Daithí Mackay was in contact with, as far as you're aware, you weren't aware that he was in contact with Jamie Bryson from Daithí Mackay himself?
I think I've answered that one.
From
let's go,
Thomas
let's go-
O'Hara.
let's go to question number 3. That's been answered at
Were
least
you
4
aware of
times.
any contact? Were you aware of the contact from anybody else other than Daithí Mackay?
I think I've answered that one as well. That's the no knowledge part of the no. But I mean, I know
But you were
it-
clearly aware after the article ran in the Irish News, for example, on the
I
19th.
had no prior knowledge of any of this stuff, and of course, it's amazing, but they didn't sell the Irish News in San Sebastian and Donostia when I was there. But no, I mean, keep going through the questions, Madam Chairman.
Okay, did you exchange any electronic communication with Daithí Mackay about Jamie Bryson in general?
I think I've answered that one too. I think I've actually answered that fairly authoritatively.
So you've references in relation to the evidence he has given. Did you exchange any electronic communication about Jamie Bryson generally?
I think actually I mentioned about 6 different social media feeds, and I have no contact with any of these people. But keep going. There may be a part of no contact you don't understand, Madam Chairman, but you're going to leave no questions for anybody else.
Have you had any contact?
Even Mr. Alistair.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
Have you had any contact with Daithí Mackay in relation to Jamie Bryson since the article in the Irish News on the 19th of August?
Well, I have no contact with anyone involved in this particular story or affair.
Okay. Did you have any phone conversations or face-to-face conversations with Daithí Mackay in relation to Jamie Bryson's evidence, either before or after he gave evidence?
I'm admiring your stickability, but I'm referring you back to my opening statement.
I mean, what I'm trying to ascertain here is all of the aspects of it. You've made quite a general statement, and there are a number of specifics around this.
Madam Chairwoman, a very specific, right on the money statement, right on the money. So either move on, let the rest of the committee have a crack at this, but it is a wee bit silly.
Okay, so
I've made
to
my
summarise
position
then,
very clear.
right, so we're not getting very clear answers here. So your evidence to this committee is you had no contact with Daithí Mackay, the chairperson, about Jamie Bryson. Full
And
stop.
tell me this, would you consider that a clear answer?
I'm offering you the opportunity to
Would
answer
you,
that.
would you consider that a clear answer if I was to answer that question? So many times have I answered that question so far today.
Minister, I'm trying to differentiate between conversations you may have had with the
You don't have to
chairperson about Jamie
differentiate between
Bryson,
anything.
conversations that you had with the chairperson in and around his evidence prior to him giving evidence, conversations you may have had with Daithí Mackay after he gave his evidence, and any conversations that you've had with Daithí Mackay or anybody on his behalf after the article came out in the newspaper. Those are very different questions.
I'm going to exercise an abundance of patience. I have no involvement whatsoever with this particular affair. None, zilch, nada, nothing. Cannot be of help to you in that regard.
So for the record, you're confirming that you had no conversations with Daithí Mackay
This is,
at any stage about
I
Jamie
think
Bryson?
you're watching too much Peyton Place. For the record, it's all over the media, and I'm repeating it. I'm
Giving
repeating
you
it.
the opportunity on the record, Minister.
Well, you're very kind because you've given me that opportunity about 10 times already today, and we have been very firm, and that it's always a danger when you start using the royal we. But I have been very firm in this, so I'm going to exercise abundance of patience. So please move on, ask another question if you wish.
Do you know Mr. Thomas O'Hara?
No.
Did Thomas O'Hara, to your
I got any
knowledge...
marks for actually answering one of the yes
Thank
no
you.
questions? Yes or a no?
Did Thomas O'Hara, as far as you're aware, work for Daithí Mackay?
I have no idea.
Were you aware if Thomas O'Hara worked for Sinn Féin?
Wonder what relevance that would have to this particular set of communications and whatever else, what my knowledge of who Mr. O'Hara was. I suspect it's no knowledge, no relevance whatsoever, because if I had no involvement with knowledge of part in, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if 2 interruptions from Mr. Wells. We'll see how he gets on when it comes to his chance to ask a question. That's 3 interruptions. We'll see how you get on. Well, we'll see how you get on.
So, Minister, with the greatest respect,
Thank you
we
very
know
much.
that Thomas O'Hara was in communication with Jamie Bryson.
Okay.
There's been some suggestion that Mr O'Hara was employed by Daithí Mackay. It's clear from these exchanges that Mr O'Hara has considerable knowledge in and around the NAMA-related issues. It is also of common knowledge the way the Sinn Féin party system operates, and that you have a huge number
What way would that be?
that there's a number of...
Let's test your knowledge of how Sinn Féin operates.
Well, I think it's common knowledge, Minister, and I'm not here to answer your questions. And we've asked you here to answer
Well, it's actually
a number of questions.
it's a conversation we're having, Madam Chairman.
But it's
because
very
we're not a
clear that
witness.
Sinn Féin as a party have a number of people employed in terms of policy issues. Now, we've got Mr O'Hara, who knows a great deal about NAMA. What I'm trying to establish is that, was he working to Daithí Mackay, or was he working to Sinn Féin?
Aye.
Because you as a member of Sinn Féin, if he was working to Sinn Féin, that is a very different issue.
Okay, tell me this here. Are we having a conversation, or are you going to refuse to answer any questions?
Minister, you're here to answer our questions.
I've just asked you a question,
And
Madam
you've
Chairman.
offered to come along to answer those
No,
questions.
I've just asked you a question. Are we having a conversation, or you're going to refuse to answer any questions? Just said you're not going to answer any questions I put. Are we having a conversation, or are you going to treat me as a
I
witness?
would suggest to you, Minister, that these are very straightforward questions. Either it is in your knowledge or not that Thomas O'Hara works for Sinn Féin, and there are further questions, and I think you will appreciate that sometimes we do need to break these down and establish what's happening, because I think it is important that, for example, did you receive any briefings from Thomas O'Hara?
Be my guest. I have no involvement in this particular issue in any way. I'd love to help you about Thomas O'Hara. Don't know him. Have I met him? I don't know I ever met him. We met him in the same room I was in. Never received any briefings from him. Would love to help you with this inquiry, and I hope your next witnesses you bring in, if you treat them like witnesses, I hope they're more helpful than I can be. But I am a blank slate in this one. Maybe we should have talked about the budgets and the rates, but on this particular one, I'm not going to be able to help you. But keep going.
And I will continue to pursue these questions, because I do think that they are relevant, and I would ask the Minister, these are very simple to answer, yes or no, within your knowledge. And, you know, you have stated to the media you have nothing to hide on this. I'm giving you an opportunity to put on the record here some facts around this. And I made it clear to you, I am not sitting here in judgment. I'm asking you to put a series of facts down in and around this, facts which are of concern to this committee. And I do think that the employee situation of Thomas O'Hara is relevant to this.
Good. Well,
Because he's clearly working on behalf of somebody.
yeah.
Now, the question there is, if he's employed by Daithí Mackay, is he working on behalf of Daithí Mackay? But if he's employed by Sinn Féin, then he's not only working for Daithí Mackay, arguably he was working to all of the committee members at that time, including yourself.
Okay.
So were you aware that Thomas O'Hara was working for Sinn Féin and for Daithí Mackay?
With all due respect to you, I have no knowledge of who Thomas O'Hara is or isn't, so I can't help you with this particular line of inquiry. But what I do suggest, if you're interested in Mr O'Hara, invite him in. Maybe he can answer the questions. I don't believe I ever met the guy. I don't believe I've ever had any contact with him. I certainly never heard of him until this story broke. So it may be a fruitful area for Mr Mackay or Mr O'Hara, or indeed the bold Mr Bryson to discuss when they come in. But for me, I can't help you with any knowledge of Mr O'Hara and what he did or didn't do.
So you're clearly stating to the committee that you have never, as far as you are aware, you don't know Mr O'Hara, Thomas O'Hara. You've never met Thomas O'Hara. You've had no communication from Thomas O'Hara, and you've never been briefed by Thomas O'Hara, especially in
That's a very good
relation to
summary.
NAMA.
That's a very good summary, Madam Chairwoman.
And you're confirming that that is the case?
I'm saying that's right on the money as well.
Okay. I want to just read, and you were in actually for the previous discussion. In relation to the disclosure that we've received, there is reference to, reference to yourself within that to say, try and get Martin to say something in the meeting, even let him see how comprehensive the document is, so he knows it's not, and I know Jim is here, so but I'll not repeat the language then at the end of that, not to offend anybody. So that has been stated by John, this Thomas O'Hara, that you've indicated that you've never met. You didn't know of. You're not aware if he works for Sinn Féin.
Tell me this, Madam
Do you have any comment to make about that? How do you feel about
well,
that?
maybe you'll help me. I'm not going to maybe you'll help me. I was in the room, but I was answering emails and speaking to people. Sorry, I didn't. What was the revelation, if that's what it can be called today?
So we've received the full transcript of the exchanges, and
whom?
you're referenced by
From whom?
so this is from Jimmy Bryson had sent this to Jim Allister, and Jim Allister has forwarded this information.
No wonder through Mr. Allister's office. That gives me a lot of confidence.
But that information,
I do object to the comment laundered.
um,
I really do.
let's be very careful. Because what we're talking about here are very serious matters. Your name is mentioned by a party colleague of yours, Thomas O'Hara, twice within this. And I want to give you the opportunity to say, look, you've said very clearly nothing to do with this. But I want to allow you to put on the record that at any time did you do or say anything in the committee, during the NAMA committee, DFP NAMA inquiry that the committee was undertaken at that time, at the request of Thomas O'Hara or Daithí Mackay?
On this particular issue, I don't know who Mr. O'Hara is. I never had any contact with him on this issue, on the issue of Mr. Bryson's evidence. Absolutely no advice, counsel, directions from Mr. Mackay. I mean, I go back because I did say this at the start. I didn't catch it entirely, and I haven't actually seen this full transcript, and I don't know if it would be enlightening to see the full transcript or not, to be quite honest. But it really doesn't matter if I mentioned 2 times, or 20 times, or 200 times. It had nothing to do with this. But thank you for. I think that's it. I think that was what I would call a fair question. I hope that was a fair answer.
Okay. Do you know who Tom Hunchin is?
I'm afraid not.
Have you ever been contacted by a man called Tom Hunchin,
Well,
as far as you're aware?
help me. I've never heard of the guy. Who is he?
Well,
Is he
all
a
we know
friend?
about him, Minister, is that he's got an email address called hunchintom@hotmail.com.
Or does he exist?
As far as you're aware, now, regardless of whether the man exists or not, because we don't have any information about him, it's referenced again by your party colleague,
Is that not my
Mr.
party
Thomas
colleague?
O'Hara. Have you, as far as you're aware, have you at any time had any email contact from the email address hunchintom@hotmail.com?
So this is a man, we presume it's a man, we don't know if he exists. And you're asking me, did I have any contact with the man who didn't exist, the invisible man?
Perhaps to give you some
Never heard of
background,
the guy.
this appears to be some sort of a post box for information back and forth around evidence to the DFP NAMA inquiry by Sinn Féin. So there is some suggestion here that documents were sent to this Hotmail account. I'm asking you to put on the record, have you, as far as you're aware, any contact from that email address?
Could you put on the record the link with Sinn Féin?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Could you put on the record the link with Sinn Féin?
Well, it's suggested that, well, okay, I'll say that a Sinn Féin member, Thomas O'Hara, and because the Minister seemed confused as to why I was asking him that, so I'm saying that there's some suggestion that this is used as some sort of a post box email address for the evidence from Jimmy Bryson, which was subsequently then received by Thomas O'Hara, my Sinn Féin member. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to confirm that you've had no contact from that Hotmail address, as far as you're aware.
I've never heard of the invisible man, and he's never been in contact with me.
Okay. Moving on. In relation to, and again, you can answer this or you may decline to answer this.
You'll have to ask it first,
Any
Madam Chairwoman.
point, at any point, because you've indicated that you've had no contact with Daithí Mackay, you've had no contact, you don't know who Thomas O'Hara is. In terms of the committee inquiry of the previous mandate, did you receive any instructions or requests in terms of anything that you were to say or do within that committee from Sinn Féin?
And I understand your questions are in a list and you're reading from them. And it may be difficult to listen to what I said or take it on board what I said previously. But I've answered that one too. And I answered it a few minutes ago. I'm going to leave it like that. I think that's enough because I don't know how many of these questions that you didn't hear the original answers to you're going to ask again. But sure, keep going.
I want to offer you the fullest possible
Thank you.
opportunity in terms of all aspects of this.
You're
And there are a number of questions.
very kind. If you check, as you're aware, as you pointed out, it's unanswered. You go back and check answers, you'll see I've answered that question. But happy to take the next question.
And I think the key aspect of this, Minister, is that trying to establish, because, and there is a serious allegation there, and I don't think there's any way that you can get around that the previous chairperson and somebody who is speculated to be employed by him, because we don't know that yet, and you haven't shed any light on that, but that an employee, a possible employee, acting on behalf of the previous chairperson, has been involved in collusion and discussions and back and forth in terms of evidence, that inquiry, an inquiry that you sat on. But what you're saying to me, because I'm trying to tease us out about, you know, what role you had, what information you knew, you're indicating to me that as you sat in that inquiry, and you sat in that committee, you had received not only no instruction from Sinn Féin or anybody associated with Sinn Féin about what you should do, but you had no conversations about what you should do in any part of that inquiry. So you were operating absolutely singly as a member of that committee in terms of all decisions, all acts, all questions.
Well, you were doing well there. You were doing well. You sounded a bit like me. But then you went a step further, which I've never said. I've never said that I never had pre-meetings around the inquiry or talked to other people in Sinn Féin around the inquiry. What I have said, and I repeat again, and I'm happy to say it again and again, I had no involvement in this particular affair, communications, no advice, directions or anything else in relation to Mr Bryson's evidence. So let's not make a mistake of putting words in my mouth. So we're here to discuss one issue. There were other issues during the Naman inquiry around PIMCO, around Fortress, around Cerberus. It was an inquiry on for some time, so of course I would have been speaking to other colleagues in Sinn Féin around those matters. But on the issue that's under discussion here today and why you're gathered together in committee, I refer to my original statement that I had no involvement of any type in the communications or dialogue or whatever you would call it, the inappropriate behaviour, and no knowledge of it, of any type.
And I think, to be fair, what I'm trying to establish with you is to make that and to clearly differentiate, and that's why the questions are very specific, even though that you haven't answered a great deal, a great many of those, is to say, look, let's separate out the general inquiry. And you've said to us that you did have pre-meetings, and I think that, you know, that's information where, well, look, you had a pre-meeting to presumably on a party basis, which is not presumably uncommon. People have pre-meetings in relation to this, but you're telling us that at no point during a pre-meeting, despite the fact that you had pre-meetings, did the issue of Jamie Bryson giving evidence come up at that meeting, and you had no discussion about that. Because, Minister, I do think that that's why I'm trying to get at the detail of this, because if you were, perhaps you were out of the country at the time, perhaps you were distracted by something else and you weren't involved in that, but it certainly would strike people as unusual that you're having a discussion, and one of the key pieces of evidence in this, you're privy to no discussions whatsoever with any of your party colleagues, anybody in your party, no party employees, or the chairperson of that inquiry. And that's what you're saying to us today. You had no conversations about Jamie Bryson's evidence, either before he gave it or after he had given it.
No, you're doing well. I mean, you're actually sounding a bit like me, but then you go too far ahead. To suggest that Jamie Bryson come in here, at no time did I say to Big John O'Dowd in the Assembly, Jamie Bryson's in, the man himself, on Wednesday. How do you think that evidence will go? Or that we spoke about it leading up to it. All those things, I'm sure, will happen in the normal course of events. You know, it was a big moment for the committee. In fact, I think we debated it several meetings beforehand, and Paul and I would have disagreed about whether to allow Mr Bryson to speak in public, as it were. I stand with the decision to allow him to speak in public. So I'm not saying I never discussed the fact that Jamie Bryson was coming to the committee. It was actually been on for several weeks. But what I'm saying really, you know, and you've actually, to give you your dues, Madam Chairwoman, you put it well. I have no involvement in this particular affair, communications, direction, and had no knowledge of it. So you've done well in summarising my position, but then you made a wee leap, which I didn't say. But certainly on this issue of trying to usurp or subvert the role of the committee, trying to prepare witnesses, trying to have a discussion outside the room with witnesses to try and prep witnesses. All that, I'm afraid, this particular affair, I have no involvement with whatsoever.
And I appreciate that the Minister does like to operate, I think, at a high level on much of these types of issues, and you've made a very general statement about having no knowledge or involvement with. And yet, you've just said to this committee that, of course, you had conversations with party colleagues and with others in relation to Jamie Bryson's evidence. Now, I have been trying to tease out, as it were, and give you the opportunity to indicate who you had those conversations with. Now, you've said you didn't have them. You've told us who you didn't have them. So you've said on record you didn't have any conversations with Daithí Mackay about this.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is because this NAMA inquiry went on for 9 months. But you see, the inquiry is about the attempt to usurp the role of the committee. It was an attempt to subvert the committee, an attempt to go behind closed doors and try and prep a witness. In that regard, whatever happened in that matter, I had no knowledge of, no involvement with, no part in. There's a few members of the DUP. You can be sure that I said to them, whether in the cafe or in the corridors, there's a big debate going on here. Judith Cochrane, we would have discussed it because she had a different view on it, and give her full right that she had a different view than me on whether Jamie Bryson should give evidence in public. So obviously, and whether it was with Sinn Féin or with DUP or with UUP or other members, we would have been for some time saying there's a big debate. It was the biggest debate for, I don't remember, it was 2 meetings or 3 meetings. But you see, we're not investigating that. You're not actually investigating anything, but you haven't asked me here to discuss that. What you've asked me to discuss is any light at all getting in, any linkage, any connection, any thread which can link me to the affair surrounding Messrs O'Hara, Bryson and Mackay. And here's the rub, Madam Chairwoman. It's been a long time since I was in Donosti San Sebastian, but in that period, those who were throwing the mud haven't been able to get any thread, any scintilla of evidence, any little square patch of evidence linking me to this disgraceful and inappropriate behaviour. So I'm trying to be as helpful as I can, and we're not even out of the blocks yet. So there's
I
more
do
people.
think
But just to let me finish, Madam Chairwoman, because I'm very happy for you to think and have your own opinions. And at the end of the day, people will listen to the witnesses and come to their conclusion. But we've been here now a wee while, and still nothing whatsoever that diverts me or deflects me from what I said at the very start, which is that I had no part, no hand, act or part in these particular communications. Knew nothing about them until they broke when I was on holiday. And happy for you to pick that scab and scrape around that and do what you can around that, but there won't be any difference. There won't be any difference, and the question will not lead to any link at all to me, to this particular affair.
But
Thank you, Madam.
surely the Minister can understand that I asked you a whole series of questions about what communication you did or didn't have, and you were saying didn't have any communication, didn't talk to you about this evidence, etc. You're now saying to us that of course you had pre-meetings, of course you had conversations, this went on for months. So what I'm trying to identify, and I think it's a legitimate, very much a legitimate question, is what those conversations were about. Because arguably, Minister, if you have a pre-meeting, presumably it is to decide what course of action that you're going to take. Now, I am not saying to you here that you may have known what was happening, that is for somebody else to investigate. But what I'm saying is that if you were sitting in Daithí Mackay, presumably as your policy lead within the, or as the chairperson in your pre-meeting, and he was saying, look, you ask these questions, you intervene there, this is the way we're going to vote, that is very relevant in terms of what we're trying to look at.
Good for you, Madam Chair. But I've answered that question too, because I've said on this I took my own counsel, received no direction, no advice, no prior knowledge, no attempt to tell me what I should do or shouldn't do with Mr Bryson's statement. In fact, when he made his statement, and Mr Wells was here, Mr Girvan, I'm not sure who else was on the committee at that time, maybe Ms Hannah. Sorry, I'm not sure, maybe Ms Hannah maybe at that time as well. Actually, the statement, I think, then dictated the pace of the questioning. But I hadn't heard the statement before that, so there was no attempt to by anyone to try and intimate that statement would be made or coming out. So happy to help you, but no one advised me, and I didn't. I know other people had a chance to go through this evidence, maybe watch it in video and so on. But I did read through the answer the other night, and I stand over my statement, which was been made many times here. I had no knowledge of this affair and no involvement in trying to usurp the role of the committee, which I defended forthrightly, and no knowledge of it in any type. And none of my questioning was influenced by anyone else, whether members of the DUP or members of the Alliance Party or members of Sinn Féin.
And I'm sure the Minister will understand the concern that, you know, we have some detailed transcripts there. Now, clearly, this Thomas O'Hara, who you're on record that you've never met and you don't know, they've never been in contact with you, and that's your record. But this man has a significant amount of knowledge in and around these NAMA DFP committee inquiry related issues. There's no doubt about that from reading this. There's a significant amount of knowledge. Not only that, but this man who you've never met and you don't know mentions you, just using your first name, on 2 separate occasions about what you were going to do at the committee. Now, with the evidence that you've given, if I were you, I would be very angry about that this man is saying that he's making some promises to Mr Bryson, where he's indicating that you're going to be able to jump in and you're going to be able to do. Now, you're saying that you've no involvement with any of that. You had no knowledge of what was being promised by a party member on your behalf, and that you certainly didn't act in accordance with that.
Thank you.
But we have heard that you, and you have admitted that you have had pre-meetings in relation to this. So we have a situation where, so are you saying
Pull up, hold those horses,
so you'd indicated you did have a
hold those
serious
horses, Madam Chairwoman, hold the horses. I've stated many times, I had no knowledge of this, no pre-meetings, no advice, no direction around this particular affair and communication between Mr Bryson, Mr Mackay and Mr O'Hara. So you were doing well, but don't be railroading me into anything I didn't say. In fact, quite just, Madam Chairwoman,
and I'm allowing you a lot of space here to answer,
well,
okay? But you do. I'm going to clarify the question. I'm going to clarify the question for you,
Well,
okay?
no, you
I am
put-
not
Madam
stating
Chairwoman, you didn't
about
ask a
this
question.
incident.
Well-
Jamie Bryson's evidence
Yeah.
is what I'm asking you about.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're conflating the 2 issues. You're conflating the email exchanges and the conspiracy that is alleged. And my questions to you legitimately about what discussions you had about Jamie Bryson's evidence. Now, you have stated, I had a number of conversations with party colleagues and others about Jamie Bryson's evidence. Now, I'm asking you, and of course it's up to you whether you want to answer this, but for the record, did you have a pre-meeting or party discussions in relation to the Jamie Bryson's evidence? Separate from the other, about Jamie Bryson's evidence.
I don't mind you repeating questions or coming back on questions, but just for the record, you said if you were me, you'd be angry. Well, anger isn't a good emotion, Madam Chairwoman, so I don't think any of us should be angry about this.
And your party colleague is saying that you're some puppet on a string that's going to react in a certain way.
I know Mr Alistair and Mr Wells are keen to interrupt, but let's have the Minister of Finance being allowed to answer to a long question followed by a long supplementary question. Whatever way you wish to approach this question, and I'm on record as saying that I was shocked when these revelations were made. What the great thing about it is that what I said on my arrival back at work the first morning remains the case, remains the facts of the matter, remains irrefutable, remains unanswerable, because it's the truth. And that is that I had no involvement whatsoever in this matter. And while I may have, and I'm going to save their blushes by not naming the members of the DUP or the members of the Alliance Party or the members of the SDLP, including my good colleague Dominic O'Brien, that we would have said there's a discussion happening today and around whether it's Paddy Kearney as a witness, whether it's Mr Bryson as a witness, whether it's the Law Society, that we would have discussions. But you see, that's not the nub of the matter. The nub of the matter is, do any of those discussions indicate that A, I was involved with this communications and attempt to usurp the right and role of the committee? That's the nub. Or did anyone try to dupe me into doing so? And in both, unequivocal, very unequivocal and very clear. No involvement in it, and no one told me what to say at that committee. I think I can't be much clearer than that. But test me. Maybe I'll try
I
again.
thank the Minister for that answer. But what I want you to understand is what we're trying to get at is that regardless of whether you had knowledge about the exchange, okay, and you've said very clearly on record that you had no knowledge about this exchange or that there'd been contact, that if you went to a pre-meeting and on the back of that exchange, and very serious, and there's some very serious allegations that come out, people are rightly concerned about this. We've got Jamie Bryson seemingly indicating here that he'll use obviously any old name because the committee can't check it, so I'll just tell him a source, misleading the committee in a matter of such importance, and that is something within the knowledge of Mr O'Hara. But in that situation, if you were in a pre-meeting and you were told, right, we're going to vote in this way, we're going to vote to allow Jamie Bryson's evidence, you must jump in and say that this is critical, you must do that. So what I'm trying to establish is, regardless of your knowledge, were you acting in a way that was influenced? Now, you're indicating you didn't know about this, but was ultimately influenced by this coaching and the collaboration and the collusion that appears to have taken place. And I think there's a clear difference here, Minister.
Well, look, thanks, Madam Chairman. Only took you half an hour to get onto the ground of accepting that what I'm saying about having no knowledge, part involvement with this matter
I'm
is the
stating
truth.
as a fact,
But,
you've said
but
on
just to go back, I want to mention two things. One, you are fully entitled to consider these as serious allegations. To me, they are part of a sorry affair. And really, if I mentioned twice, and I'm not sure if I mentioned 3 times, or 300 times, or 200 times, or twice, or once, it doesn't matter to me. So maybe the allegation is made 15 times, but it's the same as the 2 guys standing out in the cafe who are talking about me now, or 2 people down in Kelly Cellars in a pub on a Saturday night. They can tweet whatever they want, Facebook whatever they want, say whatever they want, but it's not going to change the facts of this case, and I'm going to state them again. 1, no involvement in the attempt to usurp the right of the committee. But secondly, no one directed me in my evidence. No one said jump in here, don't jump in there. And in fact, I stand over the questions I put that day. But you pay your money and you make your choice.
And, you know, I will try to resist stepping into the area of, you know, the irony of around he said to she said, and some man in a pub says this allegation, because, you know, you were part and parcel, and this is what we were looking at, of calling somebody, and this is what the controversy is about in terms of this evidence.
Yeah, but
hearsay evidence or direct evidence, allegations without proof, and that's what we're trying to look at. And, you know, so I think, you know, many would probably say there was an irony, because you've made many statements around.
So now we're going to discuss irony, are we?
But you know, there are serious issues in terms of this. We're trying to give you an opportunity. Now, there will be an investigation into all this. Trying to give you an opportunity to put
Not
up
by this
record about
committee?
that. Sorry?
About whom?
There's an investigation by the, well, at least in the first instance.
Madam Chairwoman,
and
it's
there are some
sounding like
very
a high-level question now. Let's discuss irony.
Okay, well, let's try it.
I'm very happy. You can, I mean, if I was mentioned 40 times or 4 times or 2 times, it makes no difference to me. I have no involvement in it, so I don't really care if it's 2 guys in a cafe or somebody else. But I stand over, as other members do, our approach and I think I speak to the DUP, they stand over their decision that they believe that Jimmy Bryson shouldn't have been allowed to give evidence in public. And I can't remember how Judith Cochran voted in that name, but I think the Ulster Unionists voted with me, and I stand over that decision. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there was very clearly an attempt to usurp the right of the committee, and I condemn that. I had no knowledge of it. And, you know, whether it's, we're now moving in the irony, it is going to be like a response to an A-level question in the English language. But so hopefully that's been helpful.
But I want to allow, obviously, other members in, because I know that there are a range of questions, and you know, there's no doubt to be accused of something if you're innocent with no proof whatsoever is not good. It's not what committees should be doing.
Don't worry about it.
But you know, there will be investigations. I think there's been a number of times where that has happened, and I don't think it's done committees any good.
But you would rather.
So we are just trying to tease this out, because the person, you know, you are there to say, look, I didn't do this, and it's now on the record that you haven't. So in terms of that investigation, I think it is about openness around that. Before I move on to
But
other
Madam
members,
Chairwoman, just to, don't be worried about me. Don't be worried about me. I'm totally relaxed about this. I'm totally chillaxed about this. I don't really care if I mention 2 times or 200 times, because I had no involvement in this. So I appreciate your sympathy and the fact. if you are, just to finish, Madam Chairman, because I know you're going to move on. I appreciate your sympathy and your concern for me, but I'm not in any way distressed or concerned about this matter, because what I have said has been proven to be right in the time since. And I admire the fact that you've gone through all your questions and were exactly where I was in the opening remark, that I had no involvement, no part in, no communication with any of the players. But thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, I do think we've had some further insights in terms of conversations that you have had around this, and I would say, look, I'm glad that you're indicating you're chillaxed about this, but lots of people aren't. They're very
Well, you'd
serious
be
allegations.
surprised, Madam Chairman, you'd be surprised. I'm out and about. I think I could probably say I'm out and about more morning, noon and night. Maybe it's not a very sensible thing than any other member of this August Assembly, but certainly more than any other minister. They have more sense. They're at their desk trying to do their work. And it's funny out there, you know. I was with a conference in Sleep Donner this morning. I've been in Banbridge. I've been in Enniskillen a couple of times over. In relation to my involvement in it, no one's concerned at all. No one's concerned at all. I'm happy to make an exception for yourself and the members of the committee. But when I meet the IOD, when I meet the CBI, when I meet the Small Business Association, when I meet NERTA, believe me, this isn't on the agenda. It's not item 1 on the agenda. It's not item 20. But I'm doing you the courtesy and the respect of being here to answer the questions. But if you ask me, what are people concerned about? They're concerned about the NAMA Cerberus scandal.
Here, here.
They're concerned about the fact that three times there was a bailout for the people involved at the heart of this particular scandal, and nothing has happened to the Golden Circle involved in it. First, when the Golden Circle broke the bank, and there had to be a €65 million bailout, which made them whole again, and went on, of course, when the bankers continued to get their bonuses. That was the first particular, I think, blow to the poor, as our great friend Yanis Varoufakis says, and the poor suffer what they will. That was the first one, but the second one was when this Project Eagle came about and was sold. €5 billion became around £1.3 billion. What an act of magic that was, because what they did was they took the debt. They took the debt burden of the Project Eagle and they loaded it onto the shoulders of the ordinary working people of the south of Ireland.
And the members are
I'm
looking at that
not
issue
finished,
later on. So, look, I'm going to bring you back to the point of why you're here. And there's no doubt that is of interest to people. There's no doubt about that, Minister.
Good for you, but I'm not finished. I'm not finished. I'm going to have my day as well, because I'm going to speak for those who had the burden of that debt transferred to their shoulders, and the ordinary working people. And there are children in the South of Ireland, and their children's children are going to be paying off that particular debt. And that was the Project Eagle. So as if that wasn't bad enough, that was corrupt at its core, that was a dirty scheme, that the people who are carrying the burden, who will have to cope with the emigration and the unemployment and the hardship, that they look on while the Golden Circle bust the country, that they had another run on it. Second bailout, but Madam Chairwoman, I'm not finished. Third bailout. Those who
Minister, we
benefited
will be
from...
discussing this later on
Well,
in the committee.
good
I know
for
the members
you.
are very keen to be answered questions. We've heard you speak about this before. We've asked you to come along on a very specific issue. I think this is a very good segue to my final question before I invite members in, which is how many other witnesses or property developers did you meet with during that period?
Right, let me just finish this and then we'll come on to your question, because I will have my say in this committee or anywhere
So you
else.
talk a lot about the poor
Thank you.
and
The
those
fin-
who were burdened.
the
but
fin- the
we know
finance
that you
min-
met with
finance
some of the
minister
property
will have a
developers.
finance minister will have a say at this committee, because here's the third bailout for the Golden Circle. After the deal was done and the money was moved to the Isle of Man and the ordinary people were left in negative equity, after that deal was done, then they shared the spoils. And some of the Golden Circle who bust the country
Minister, these matters are
emerged
under
back.
police investigation, and this committee is being very careful about drawing
Thank you.
conclusions in relation to
Thank
these
you.
issues. You are drawing a number of conclusions here.
Thank you, and I'm going to draw more conclusions, Madam Chairwoman. The third bailout for the Golden Circle was linked to the NAMA Service deal, because it wasn't just a rotten, sordid stew of corruption.
I'm going to,
The
look,
fact the
as
Project
a
Eagle sailed.
chairperson of this committee, I have a responsibility in terms of the legal considerations. The NCA has made indications about particularly drawing conclusions. There's an investigation underway, and at the end of that investigation, there will be conclusions and there will be judgments. And none of us can sit here and say what did or didn't happen, quite frankly. So, you know, I am going to. You haven't answered. Sorry, John. Did you have a comment?
You've just spent half an hour doing that.
I've been trying to tease out with the minister legitimately.
You have been trying,
Absolutely
you've been trying to
legitimately.
reach conclusions in relation to who Jamie Bryson was in contact or wasn't in contact with, and
facts.
trying to reach a conclusion as to whether the Minister was in contact with Jamie Bryson or not. That is an investigation, which the PSNI have asked us not to get involved in. Now, I think we can explore this, but you can't then put out what the NCA has asked us not to do in relation to NAM, and then you do the exact same thing in relation to this.
No, I am giving the Minister, as we discussed, okay? We're not carrying out an inquiry in relation to this. We have discussed that the independent commissioner will look at these issues. I want to afford you the opportunity, and I said this time and time again.
It sounds
to
like
put
you're
all
trying
effort-
to be the
I-
independent
I
commissioner, Chair.
absolutely accept that.
That's
I think
what
your
it
party
sounds like
colleagues
there.
are very
I
much
would
in
hate just to
support of you.
fight. I would hate just to fight over me, Madam Chair, but you know what's going to happen here today? I'm going to finish my point. So I don't mind if you ask the first speaker in, but I'm going to finish the point.
The
because
Minister, I think this did come up. This did come up in terms of the previous inquiry, and what I'm trying to get at here is the integrity of the previous inquiry about what happened, what was reliable and what was not. And I want to bring other committee members in here. But one thing that was apparent throughout that was that a number of the members of the committee came to a judgment in the middle of evidence sessions before hearing certain evidence. Now, in terms of a committee inquiry, and everybody, we've had this discussion about trying not to do that. Now, you can put certain things and allow people to answer that, but we are certainly at no point about making conclusions or anything about making judgments. There's investigations that are ongoing, and to be fair, Minister, you've been stating a number of positions about what had happened there, and I know that you're very keen that you've done it before, but you are here to speak about a certain issue, and I am going to bring you back to that issue, and I want to bring in Jonathan Bell.
Well, let me just say before Jonathan comes in, because I did reach conclusions around the NAMA service
in the middle of
scandal,
the evidence.
and I have made judgments. And I want to finish the point about the third bailout for the Golden Circle, because after the NAMA service deal was done, they re-emerged. They re-emerged and got back the land that was seized by NAMA from Project Eagle. They came out of the woodwork and they were made whole and received their land.
To be fair.
Not a distraction view from the market area of South Belfast, where I was last night at a public meeting, where someone who was supposed to be bankrupt in the first deal, which bankrupted an entire state, the 65 billion, excuse me, who was supposed to lose out on the Project Eagle deal. When this person re-emerges, and we have in the market area, an area like Sandy Row or Donegal Pass or Tigers Bay, a 14-storey tower block in the middle of an estate. So let's be clear about who's suffering, how the rich get richer, how the poor will suffer what they must. And I won't be silent on the stew of corruption, which was the NAMA service scandal. And I do hope that whether it's Kevin Geddes, whether it's NCA or the FBI or the SEC or the Garda Síochána, I do hope those responsible for what was a dodgy and dirty deal, I do hope they're brought to justice. So happy that I was able to help you so far today. Looking forward to working with the members. But let's not forget why we're here. And this is important. What's happened between Messrs Bryson, O'Hara, McKay. Just to finish, Madam Chairwoman, I will be brief. This is important. And I respect and accept the right of the committee to ask questions about it. But it's not as important as the corruption that surrounded the sale of Project Eagle and the hardship caused by that to ordinary people.
Okay,
But Madam Chair, thank you for the leeway.
Thank you. And we're all conscious of time as well, and I know that you've answered a range of questions there, but I do come back to the point that this committee is very seriously concerned about, and we do consider it, I know all things are relative, but we consider this to be a very serious issue, particularly in light of these, and about somebody misleading this committee, not being honest about sources, not being honest about any evidence, and causing damage to people's reputations and names. These are all serious matters as well, and I want to bring Jonathan in, who's indicated first. There's a number of other people as well.
Good, Chair. Minister, when did you first have contact with witnesses to the NAMA committee?
No idea. Can somebody, Mr. Ellis is usually good at this, when did the NAMA inquiry investigation start? Does anybody know? I mean, you're all studying this, you're on the cusp of another investigation, somebody must know.
When's your first recollection, Minister, of having contact with witnesses to the NAMA
No
committee?
idea, somebody help me. When did it? July what, sorry?
July 2015.
I think that's a good date, Jonathan, July 2014.
15.
Sorry, 15. Sorry, Jim, thank you. But, I mean, they need to read out all the witnesses because we heard from quite a few people, didn't we? We heard from ministers. We heard from Peter Robinson, we heard from Martin McGuinness. So maybe if you can be more precise.
What communication did you have with witnesses to the committee?
Well, I think Mr. Robinson, I said to him, should I call you Peter, our First Minister? He said, call me Peter. This Law Society, I don't know any communication at all with the banks, and was NAMA. I can't help you, but if you want, if somebody wants to provide a full list of all the people who give evidence to the committee, we can go over that. But with respect, Jonathan, let's all get to the point, because there's anything here in this line of questioning that wishes to connect me to the acts of Mr. O'Hara, Mr. Bryce and Mr. McKay. Let's get to it, because the answer is going to be no part of it. But keep
Do
on.
you had any other indirect communication or contact with witnesses to the committee?
Well, Mr. Robinson and I would occasionally nod across at each other at the assembly, but other than that, it's an interesting area you're exploring. But you know, we're here to deal with Mr. O'Hara, Mr. Bryson, and Mr. McKay.
I'll ask you again, what contact did you have, either directly or indirectly, with any witnesses to the committee?
I think I answered that. I think myself and Mr. Robinson would nod across the assembly occasionally.
That's
And,
the sum total of it?
No, I haven't finished. You're
Okay.
going to have to take your time. But I think what you would do is you would have to supply all the names of the witnesses. But you know what I would do at that point? When you in your wisdom, Jonathan, said, I'm going to draw up a list of all these witnesses, and Jim wasn't even on that, wasn't the clerk, unfortunately, so even he can't help us. You know what I would do? I would say, see that's a very interesting line of inquiry. I wonder, does the Assembly have a Standards Commissioner that can investigate this particular matter? And I would send you packing, and I would say, get to the heart of the matter. Mackay, Bryson, O'Hara, and the communications which
Minister, did you
tried
have
to
any
usurp.
financial involvement with any of the witnesses to the inquiry?
Just to finish, and what I would say is with all those.
Minister, the question
individuals
is,
in the
did you
list-
have any financial involvement, either directly or indirectly, through your numerous businesses, with any witnesses to the inquiry?
That's actually the next question. I'm still answering the question before that. And what I would say to you when you
This is
came
a
forward with that.
diversion, Madam Chair. Can I ask the Minister, through you, to answer the question, did he have any direct or indirect financial involvement with any of the witnesses to the NAMA inquiry?
You were talking there, Madam Chairman, but he's looking for a direction before I answer the question before this question.
Question I'm
And some
asking,
indication just to
Madam
bring
Chair, I suspect the Minister knows well, is did he have any financial involvement with any witness to the NAMA inquiry?
Yeah, but I'm,
Yes, you did.
Madam Chairwoman,
Does the Minister want to answer that question?
thank you, but I'm going to answer the question before that first. And the answer to the question before that was that if Jonathan, in his wisdom, wanted to quiz me or grill me or interrogate me or ask me questions about the entire NAMA investigation, I would direct him to the office of the Assembly
We
Standards
understand
Commission.
now, just to put on record, there is an investigation. I think there's a complaint that has been made in terms of a relationship between yourself, financial relationship between yourself as director of the newspaper group and one of the witnesses, and you hadn't declared any interest at that time. So that is the subject of
Yeah.
an ongoing investigation. But again, it's a matter for you, Minister, to put on the record
See-
that it is your opportunity to say
Very kind.
that you didn't have any.
You're very kind, but-
you know, if you want a declined answer, please say declined answer, and we
Well,
can put that down on the record.
I have to answer the question before that, and then we'll decide whether we decline the answer or not. But the answer to the question before that is if Jonathan, in his wisdom, wanted to replace the office of the Assembly Standards Commissioner, I would say to him, Jonathan, why the hell do you think we have an Assembly Standards Commissioner to investigate MLAs? And if you want to turn this particular hearing into a round-the-houses discussion about marching on Willue or around the House's discussion about the NAMA investigation, good luck to you. I'm not sure where the office of the Assembly Standards Commission, I think it's in this building somewhere, but that's where I would direct you. And secondly, God bless him, didn't know when his name would come up, but Sammy Wilson made a complaint in relation to me and my constituent, Gareth Graham, which the Welsh Standards Commissioner had to hear because the Bowl Sammy had insulted our own local commissioner so much that he isn't allowed to, or he retired or resigned or stepped back, he was stepped aside from that particular investigation. And I'm very confident that when the Standards Commissioner for the Welsh Assembly things we do, for the Western when he reports that he will find that I acted in line with the proper procedure at all time.
Okay, so we'll
but
put
the
that down as that
question-
you declined to
But the
answer.
question, Minister, is,
No, I
did you have
didn't.
any
That's
financial involvement with any witnesses to the
Well,
committee?
But
First of all,
Madam
it would
Chairwoman-
be yes or no, and then secondly would be which of the witnesses you did have, if the answer is yes,
See, Madam
a
Chairwoman-
financial involvement with. That's what the public are interested in. Your evasion is becoming more and more interesting.
Is it, Madam Chairwoman? Need to be careful now when you say I declined the answer. I actually give a very fulsome answer, and I'm going to give it again for the good of the health of Jonathan. If Jonathan, in his wisdom, thinks that he's going to use the committee, and this is early days too, because we're going right round. We haven't got to Mr. Wells yet. If Jonathan, in his wisdom, thinks that he's going to try and drag Martin O'Malley or the whole NAMA investigation into this committee meeting, he's another thing coming. But let me just add to this, and I said it before. When the good Gerard Elias reports, the Assembly Commissioner for Wales, it reports on the latest complaint from Samuel Wilson. It's not the end of them. I mean, he's a for a guy that gave us all a great turn at the committee, is a serial complainant when it comes to these matters. I won't be doing that today, but
Minister, why
Wanna
did you
give-
not
wanna give-
tell us today if you had any financial interest with the witness?
well, I was actually going to give you one more
Why would you
chance.
seek to hide that from the public?
Well, I was actually going to give you one more chance, Jonathan, so you've got it.
Why would you seek to hide that from the public, whether you had any financial interest with any witness to the inquiry?
Well, I was going to give you one more chance, and you've got it. Jonathan, for you in particular to come here,
Now, I would
You in
warn you to be
particular.
very careful here,
for you,
Minister,
Madam Chairwoman,
because I
particular,
don't want any scurrilous accusations to try to deflect from
Directed
answers,
this
okay?
direction.
Yeah.
You've got
It's a
a,
lot
you've
of
got
numbers.
a,
It's okay.
you've got a question here, okay?
So let's
For
go-
the record, you can answer the question to say, no, I didn't. Or you can answer the question to say, oh, somebody else is investigating that. And what I'm hearing from
You're
your
canting
answers,
that. You're
somebody
canting
else is
that.
investigating that, is what
No,
you're saying.
no.
So you don't want to put on record that you don't at this
no,
stage.
there is no ongoing investigation into those matters at all. Into that matter of my constituent, Mr. Gareth Graham, that investigation is concluded, and we look forward to hearing the results. So,
To put it a slightly
Jonathan-
different way, when did you first declare,
I'm gonna
as
answer
you're
that one, Madam
legally obliged to do, any relationship with the witness to the committee?
So, I mean, we're. It's hard to know when you do say, Jonathan, but as the man who did more,
Again, I would
well, Madam
Minister,
Chairwoman,
I really,
let's
as
put it-
chairperson,
let's-
I'm not going
Madam
to
Chairwoman, they're
allow-
waiting with bated breath. As the man who did more to bust the finances
Minister,
of
you're
this
here
government.
to answer questions of this
Absolutely.
committee on this issue, okay?
Well, I'm not
And
here
we
to answer
can try to,
questions.
and I will not accept the Minister or any witness starting to attack members in this committee and make various allegations.
I haven't even
There
got
is a
to
question
Mr.
there.
Hussey or Mr. Wells
So
yet.
I
but
would ask
but-
the Minister to keep calm and to
Madam Chairwoman,
step
you're-
back from insults of members of this committee.
I really do.
And there is a question there, and I know that the question's been
Here's the
answered
answer.
a number of times. Okay, so let's hear the
Madam
answer.
Chairman, I appreciate your concern about my emotions and my anger or other things, but I can assure you, when I say to Jonathan Bell, as the Finance Minister, that no one did more.
I'm not going to allow
Damage.
this, Minister, okay? I'm not going to allow that because we're not going to get into an exchange in relation to various allegations away from what we're here to talk about, okay? So what I'm going to say, right, Jonathan has asked a question a number of times, okay? You've been asked whether or not you had any financial interest in any of the other witnesses, okay? There's an answer to that. The answer could be no. The answer could be yes, or the answer is there's an investigation elsewhere.
You're going to.
So, you know, we will
Can I-
note this
on a
down.
point of order,
Yes.
you've just made a ruling there that we're not going to be distracted from the subject in which we're discussing, right? The minister's in front of us today to discuss alleged coaching by the chair of a witness. What has Mr. Bell's question got to do with that?
Well, we're here to discuss today in terms of inappropriate contact with witnesses that happened in this exchange. Now, I've indicated to all members, John.
No.
I've indicated to all members, I will allow.
At its meeting on the 23rd of August 2016, the committee agreed to invite the minister to provide oral evidence to make clear his involvement and contact with the then chairperson during that inquiry as it relates to the allegation of coaching. I put it to you again. What has Mr Bell's question got to do with that?
Well, Mr Bell is here, but and I've indicated this very strongly to everybody in this committee, okay? I want everybody to have the opportunity to ask questions. I'm not going to allow, okay? I'm not going to allow badgering of the witness to go beyond a certain point, or badgering of the minister to go beyond a certain point. But likewise, I am not going to allow the minister to start making allegations against committee members, okay? Now, I'm going to allow some flexibility in questions connected to that. But to be honest, absolutely clearly, in my view, the minister starting to make wider allegations against a member in this committee is well outside the remit of what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, but you
So I would
made a
ask
ruling.
all members to look at, we're looking at witnesses to this inquiry, the contact
No, we're
between
not.
those.
We're not.
We're looking
I'm reading from the paper provided to the committee. Background: at its meeting on the 23rd of August 2016, the committee agreed to invite the minister to provide oral evidence to make clear his involvement in contact with the then chairperson during the inquiry as it relates to the allegation of coaching. We are not here to conduct an inquiry or an investigation into contact with witnesses to the inquiry, other than what has been said out. That's what the committee agreed to do. If the committee is broadening the remit of its discussions, then the minister should be asked to leave. The committee should have a discussion about that and agree what the remit of this is.
Okay, thank you, John, for that.
Well, just one
As
final
chairperson, sorry, Jonathan, but as chairperson of this committee, and I do this on every evidence session that we've had so far in terms of witnesses, I've allowed flexibility provided it is connected to the issue. If we go beyond that or we go too far with that, I will intervene. It is in my view that it is a legitimate question, but it's been asked now a number of times. I would ask the member if he has any further questions, or if and then we will move on. I don't want to get into these types of exchanges where allegations are
I'd
thrown
like to
about.
challenge that, Madam Chairwoman, because
okay?
I want to challenge that, and I know
I
you're
feel like I
fo-
should jump in and say you
I know-
cannot
I know-
challenge.
I know you're fond of Hansard, but let's get the challenge on the record. I'm asked to come here to discuss the affair around Mr Bryson, Mr O'Hara, Mr McKay. If anyone else wants to go further, what I would say is, you know why I'm busy in the Department of Finance? Because no one did more damage to finances than Jonathan Bell with renewable heat.
look,
And I'm cleaning up his mess.
I have to say,
To
Mr.
think he would
this
try
is-
to use, just to finish, Madam Chairman, to think he would try and expand.
I'm not going to allow you
on
to
your
because
watch-
Version from
Minister-
on your
Minister-
financial
okay.
interests from
On
members
your-
who were there.
on-
The public have heard, Madam Chair.
your watch-
The Minister refused to
Right.
answer
I want
whether he
everybody-
had any financial interests with witnesses to the committee.
Jonathan,
One final
no,
question.
Jonathan, sorry, I'm going to speak to what the Minister has just said. Now, Minister, we appreciate you coming along to speak to us today, but I had clearly stated to you on a number of occasions that I did not want you to enter into allegations to other members of this committee. You're here legitimately to question you.
We all know it.
Despite the fact that I communicated that to you twice, you proceeded on to do it for the third time. I am going to allow the member to move on, but I want to put on record that I don't think that is shown respect to the chair. I do want to, and things will get, at times rocky in terms of questions, and people have legitimate questions, and it's all part of it. People need to calm down, and people need to listen to what's being said and speak to the issue. Now, if you don't want to answer the question, simply say that you're not answering the question, and we'll move
You're
on.
very kind, Madam Chair, but I'm answering all the questions, and you have made a ruling which I disagree with, because you asked me to come here and speak about the communications. And what I'm saying, when Jonathan goes off the reservation, I'm responding to say, Jonathan, the reason we're working hard in the Department of Finance because renewable heat incentives, they do carry through, it's costing the government. Do you want me to say this, Madam Chairman?
Right,
He
okay,
wants to-
we're
he
going
wants
to,
to-
Jonathan,
he
we're
wants
going to move on to your
You can
next
say whatever you
question.
wish about any other issue, and I notice the Sinn Féin support for that as enhanced in renewable heat and other things. But can I ask directly, when, if ever, did you declare any financial interest that you had with any witness to the committee?
Just as Mr Elias knows, my declarations were entirely on the record and were appropriate and correct. But just to say about this, Jonathan, when we try and repair the damage you did with renewable heat incentive, which is costing us executive 20 million a year, I hope when you stand up
Is
in
this
the
the 12
Assembly,
months?
I hope when you stand up. I hope you stand up in the Assembly and you say mea culpa, because I'm cleaning up your mess, as are other Assembly members here.
Chair, through you, I'll talk for the 12 months I was Deputy Minister. More than happy to do it at another stage. The question I asked was, when, if ever, did the Minister, when he was a member of this committee, declare to the appropriate authorities any financial involvement, either directly or indirectly, with any of his companies that he was involved in.
My declarations were all appropriate and correct, and I know your pal Sammy Wilson put a complaint in about that, and I'm happy that Gerard Ellis will find in my favour in that matter. But I'm glad that when we're going off the Mackay area, that we did have a chance to refer Jonathan to the hard work that the department's putting in cleaning up your
Okay,
mess.
Minister. Okay, we're going to move on. And before we move on, I would make very clear that our proceedings should be conducted with quorum. There are legitimate questions to answer, even if that answer is, no, I wasn't involved in that, or I don't believe that that is within what I'm here to answer. So there's a range of things that if you do feel that, okay? I want to move on to Philip Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Minister.
Well, good to see you. It's been a while.
Absolutely. I've had a
2
long
o'clock, I
set-
believe this meeting started at.
Well, you've been very patient, Minister, so thank you.
Sorry.
And as you well know, today is very much about public confidence, or at least playing a small part in helping to start a process of winning that back. I'm not sure whether we're doing that at this stage, but let's persevere. I've only a couple of hopefully are reasonably straightforward questions.
Hope they're not about the renewable heat incentive.
No, they're not. No, I can assure you of that.
Good for you.
The first question, Minister, then is: was there a Sinn Féin pre-meeting before the September committee meeting?
Well, I'm sure there was, because whether it was 2 minutes before or 10 minutes before, there would always be a pre-meeting, usually the key people, as do all parties. But I think, Philip, why you're asking the question is, was there any possibility of that meeting that, because I think you accept, and it hasn't been just as strong as a step aside the last few weeks, so I think you accept, as the Chair does, that when I said no involvement, I said no involvement, and you accept that. But I think what you're saying is, well, was there a possibility of that meeting that someone set you up, that you were duped into asking this question or that question? The answer to that is no as well, because I took my own counsel on Jamie Bryson's evidence. But more than that, the evidence that Jamie Bryson gave to the public, and I thought to the members, obviously not all the members, I thought to members, was truly shocking, and it dictated the response afterwards and how we responded. So to get to the nub of your question, Philip, this is a terrible thing, Philip. You're trying to ask a question, and I'm asking your supplementary. The nub of your question is, was there a possibility that maybe you didn't realise, but the correspondence, 3 people, if it was 3 people, that maybe they used that, and actually they did roll out their plan unbeknownst to you. And I can assure you that that wasn't the case, because in terms of Mr Bryson, the questions I asked were in response to his evidence, and I took my own counsel on them.
So there was no debate, Minister, in the pre-meeting about witness of the day or any issues arising?
No, there was nothing. I mean, what you're talking about is was there a possibility that, unbeknownst to me, that Mr McKay, to be frank, to cut to the chase, that unbeknownst to me, Mr McKay maybe planted a question for me, or said, "You come in here, come in there." And that didn't happen. I did read the answer the other night, but I'm content that I responded to the evidence, but and that I wasn't used in any way. But I suppose the crux of that, Philip, as your question is, really goes back to where we were in August. Did I know about this communication? Was I involved in it in any way? Because that, of course, would be a very serious matter, And the answer to that, as you know, and as I've been saying since it was raised, is no.
No, and I appreciate that. And I mean, obviously, you're saying there was a short pre-meeting, but there was no discussion about the witnesses or what was about to come up. Was there any discussion with party staff about the agenda for the day? I know certainly, I'm sure others around the table, if they were going to a committee meeting, they would maybe have a discussion about what are the issues, what are the research, is there any potential questions you might want to think about? Any of that happen?
No, but the only relevance of your question is did the fact, not that did we discuss Judith Cochrane, being for or against Leslie Cree, how he was voting in terms of letting Mr Robinson be asked questions in public. But the crux of your question still comes back to, was there anything said that affected my evidence on the day or that would indicate that, or well, that would have led anyone to believe I had any involvement in that dialogue or conversation. And the answer to that is no, Philip. You know, it is. I actually don't have the answer in front of me, but it was 3 or 4 weeks, or maybe 3 different committee meetings discussed this particular issue around, certainly at least 2. So it would be unwise of me to say that I didn't discuss whether with my colleagues in the DUP or colleagues in the UP or Alliance or Sinn Féin, but nothing in those conversations in any way would have given me to understand that communication was happening behind closed doors or behind our backs, or in fact nothing happened on that day that was influenced by those who were in the know. And again, Philip, you know, at the end of the day, it comes down to ordinary people. They're going to have to make their call on this. Am I telling the truth in these matters or not? And I'm happy to let the court of public opinion make their mind up.
And there have been no post committee meeting discussion as a group afterwards to discuss how things went, or?
No, Philip, but I don't think you were here at that time, but I'll tell you this, Philip, the evidence was shocking. The evidence was shocking. I'm not standing over the evidence. As we know, Mr. Bryson is an empty vessel who's filled by different people. But the evidence took us all back, except for those who knew beforehand and had seen it. And it would be wrong to say that it didn't fuel conversations, not only in this house but outside this house. But there was nothing happened afterwards since, because that is something I thought about, you know, well, how did afterwards someone not indicate, well, somebody had seen this evidence before it was given? I presume that is I think if we follow the newspapers that I think that Mr. Bryson said he provided his witness statement beforehand. I think that's what he said. But there was nothing said afterwards either, that when this story broke, that I had an aha moment. So that's why that happened. That's what I said. So maybe I'm not as aware of these things as I should. But I didn't see anything before or after until the story broke, which indicated to me that there had been interference with the proper order of things.
Okay. Thank Minister for his comments. You made a statement earlier on, a suggestion actually that maybe we should have a conversation with Mr. O'Hara, and maybe that's something that the committee might want to discuss after your evidence.
Find him.
Well, it doesn't mean we can't ask, and maybe some others as well, because I do think there's maybe we go to the nub of things. But
you would agree, Philip, that the PSNI investigation takes precedence. That, you know, I'm very happy to be here, and the committee's doing its best and doing its duty. But I think you'd agree with me. It's a PSNI investigation. It's probably the most serious matter in front of us at the minute, and when it clears the decks, I think that what you're talking about, bringing people in, whether they come or not, I think there may be a day for that. Maybe not. It's up to the committee to decide what it wants to do. But I think you'll agree with me that the most serious person in the room today was the PSNI officer who was in before me.
Indeed, and there is a criminal investigation underway. But as you have mentioned yourself, there's also the court of public opinion, and there's also the credibility of this organisation, this assembly, this committee, and what has taken place. And our challenge is trying to instil some confidence back into these institutions. And anything we can do to facilitate that, then we must do. And I hope today is maybe a starting point in doing that.
We are in agreement, Philip, for once.
Okay. Jim Allister.
Minister, I want to focus initially on quite a narrow issue. The big decision of the 23rd of September meeting was whether or not, that's the day Mr. Bryson actually gave his evidence, whether or not he would be allowed to give it in public or in private.
Yeah.
So presumably at the pre-meeting, the party pre-meeting, that would have been a focus of any discussion.
You think so?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would have thought so.
Well, you see, Mr. Allister, it's always a mistake to correct Jim Allister in this assembly. But you know, that decision was taken some weeks beforehand. We all put our lines in the sand on that. The DUP had their view on it. Judith Cochran was, who I just want to say again, because I know she's mentioned these Twitter messages, who was an absolute stand-up, in my view, member of the committee and made the decisions based on all the evidence she saw in terms of would she ask Mr Robinson to give his evidence in public or not. But we drew our lines in the sand sometime before that, and we were from early on saying that, look, if it's a public investigation, let's have a public investigation. I'm not blind to some of the issues, real issues that the DUP brought up, but I don't even know what dates this happened on, 23rd of September. Was there a meeting the week before that which also discussed the same issue? Certainly, I think it had come up several times. So,
But is it not the case that the decision to actually receive the evidence in public was made on the day it was received?
but I took that decision in my mind.
I'm not talking about what you took in your mind. I'm talking about the committee preparing to take that decision on the floor of the committee.
But you are talking about my mind, because what you're saying is that maybe somehow or other the decision was influenced by conversations.
No, the question I actually asked was, at the pre-meeting,
Yeah.
was there
have
discussion
answered that.
and focus
Yeah.
upon the fact that today that decision is going to be taken?
No, there wasn't, Mr. Alistair, but there's an interesting thing, and some of the members who are on the committee might remind me. In fact, I'm not sure we thought that decision would be taken again on the day. Now, Mr. Wells or Mr. Gervin in particular might know better than me, but I actually think that we took the decision the week before, and there was, Mr. Cree thought about it long and hard.
There was legal opinion sought to be brought to the committee.
And I do have the transcript here. So what seemed to happen was there was a decision the week before to ask Mr Bryson if he had any direct evidence.
Yeah.
And then there was a closed session to which he was to present that direct evidence, and on the basis of that day, a decision was to be made. That's my reading of the
Yeah.
transcript.
Well, you may remember it. Well, you certainly remember it better. Well, you don't remember it, Madam Chairman.
I was
You've
never
studied
told.
it. You've studied it more than me. But whatever, Mr. Alistair, and I'm happy for you to focus on the meeting of the 23rd of September and the meeting before, the meeting after. But I had no involvement in the affair at hand. And just to finish this, and while I'm happy to go round the houses with you, where we came in a little while back is where we're going to go out as well. But I had no involvement in it at all at any time, and we'll stand with it.
Just bear with me if you would. That was a decision which was obviously going to divide the committee. Some didn't want to hear him in public, and some did, and it came to, I think, a 6-5 vote in the committee. Sinn Féin clearly had a view that he should be heard in public. Is that fair?
I think I'm sort of reluctant to answer for the entire Sinn Féin group at the committee, but I think from early on, and members again can correct us, I think everybody who wanted to give evidence except for the law agencies, our position, law enforcement agencies, our position was they should all give evidence in public now. Somebody who's maybe better at Wikipedia than me or searching Hansard might disagree with that, but I think that was our position right through it, all the witnesses, and it wasn't.
But there was a
sure this is the only one.
division in the committee on this issue.
Okay, and how did that division go?
6-5.
And who voted for and against? Because you studied it, I said a wee while ago.
Sinn Féin members, Judith Cochran.
Did Mrs. Cochran, I think that day maybe, did she?
Yes, Ms Boyle, Mr Bradley, Mrs Cochran, Mr Cree, Mr
Okay.
Mackay, Mr Millier,
Okay, so.
and the DUP, and...
Was it limited, Mr.
Alistair.
Alistair? Was the decision limited? Was it, that Mr. Bryson would be allowed to come in, but it wasn't a free-for-all? I think you might find that I made some of those points either before.
No, the decision that the committee divided on was whether or not Mr Bryson's oral evidence would be taken in public session.
Yeah, well, I think it was a long discussion.
I'm sure there was, but the point I'm making to you, and the point I'm exploring with you was, the party, Sinn Féin party, obviously had a predetermined view about that it should be heard in public, and that's how they voted.
Well, and what I've said to you is that it was my opinion, and I'm always reluctant to get above my station and answer for everybody in Sinn Féin. But as a member of the committee, it was my position throughout that anyone given evidence should do so in public. Now,
Yes,
people
appreciate
brought
that.
up, just to finish, people brought up very legitimate concerns in relation to certain witnesses, and we listened to those. And I would like to think that whatever about other people, I stand over the decisions we made. We, Sinn Féin didn't have a majority on the committee.
I'm not
And we're-
faulting the decision.
No, the only person that I know who has more antipathy towards the DUP and Jimmy Bryson is yourself, so I know where this may be going. But what I'm saying is that my position was that people should give evidence in public. Some of our other colleagues, including Mrs Cochrane, was very conflicted in this, and you know...
Just to make the Minister aware, we have received from the previous clerk all of the clerk's papers and recommendations. So the question was not necessarily public or not. It was to do with whether the witness fitted within the terms of reference. And that is what had been discussed for some weeks up to that point. So the decision was about the direct evidence and whether it should be in public was it relevant to the terms of reference of the inquiry, not here is a relevant witness, should it be in public or private? And we've received quite a bit of correspondence and
Yeah.
advices from the previous clerk.
But look, for what it's worth, anyway, my position was and is that people giving evidence should do so in public. But certainly in this case, I think it was a tough call. I still think it was the right call. I know some of the DUP colleagues, after the revelations around Di McKay and Mr O'Hara and Mr Bryson, believe it vindicated their decision that it was a stitch-up, and I have some sympathy with that view, but for me, I made my decision based on legitimate grounds, appropriate grounds, and I stand over the decision that was made at the time to allow Mr Bryce to give his evidence.
But we do know from the emails between Mr Bryson and someone purporting to be Mr O'Hara that Mr O'Hara, the night before, said to Mr Bryson, I'm just trying to establish what marching or someone can jump upon and say, there's no way we can turn him away, this is credible, relevant and in the public interest.
That's the two men in the pub scenario, isn't it? Because I have no idea what they did say or didn't say the night before.
And then on the next day, you did jump into the discussion with this opinion. I think the public is desperate to find out who is going to benefit from this fixed, crooked, corrupt deal. I believe that Mr Bryson will be able to help us in that. So the author of the email, whoever it was, had an expectation that you could play a role, and you did play a role in the sense that you made the point hoped for. Now, are you asking us to believe that it was mere coincidence that the author of the email the night before gave voice to a hope and expectation that you would be helpful, and it's a mere coincidence that, in fact, you were helpful?
Well, I don't think
Is that what you're asking us to believe? It was a mere
Mr.
coincidence.
Alice, I would never ask you to believe anything. Like,
Well.
let's not push our luck today. But if you're going to ask the public to believe that I had any hand, act or part in this, you have a tougher job than I have. Because
No,
I don't.
I'm asking, do you want
Well,
the
then
public
I'm
to
answering.
believe that it's a coincidence that the night before, someone speaking of you says, we'll try and get Marshing, and I'm paraphrasing, to jump in and help. Marshing jumps in, says something helpful, and that's a coincidence.
This is really like Columbo, isn't it? You've proven your point. Let me tell you, I had no hand, act or part in the correspondence or anything about it. And
Do
in
you
fact,
want us to believe
and in
that's a
fact-
coincidence?
And in fact, and you know, Mr. Alistair, I'm going to address you through Madam Chairwoman. And in fact, anyone who knows my reputation for making a contribution, perhaps at overlength at every committee, would know that I would make a contribution to that debate. And anyone who had been to the previous meetings or listened to what I was saying publicly knows that my position was that Mr. Bryson should give his evidence in public. And you say jump in. Actually, if I remember, I think there was a lot of people that spoke before me. So, you know, I think, Mr. Alistair, you're right. The public has to believe either what I'm saying or what you're saying. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying,
So
but
when in that intervention you said, I believe that Mr. Bryson will be able to help us, on what did you base that belief?
well, I based it on not only on that day, but over some time. That, and I don't know if you've given me
You
information.
hadn't heard from him that day.
No, but We hadn't heard from Jimmy Bryson. Jimmy Bryson surely is the most prolific blogger since blog.
So I'm asking you, what did you ground your belief that he would help you?
No, but I understand what you're asking me, and I'm answering you. The most prolific blogger of our time, and you must know this. I presume you're providing some of the information for his website.
No, I'm not.
Any information at all?
Done.
Has he been in your room in Stormont?
He has seen me about issues other than this.
Okay. Was he in your room around the time of his appearance at the inquiry?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so or no?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so we're making some progress, but let me just tell you this
I
around.
would remind the Minister that
I beg your
you're
pardon.
to
I should
answer
speak through the chair.
questions, not to provide other members of the
I should speak through the chair, and I apologise for that. I think I was fairly consistent, Madam Chairwoman, throughout the inquiry on my position on Mr. Bryson. He is the blogger of all bloggers, and anyone in this assembly that doesn't know what was appearing on his site, clearly being fed to him, but of importance, would form a view whether or not they should be allowed to present evidence to the committee. And I formed that view early on, because I do believe that some of those people who are filling the empty vessel that is Jimmy Bryson did know a lot more about the NAMA service scandal than the police knew at the time, or any other agency.
But another.
Just to finish, Mr. Ross, if you don't mind, because you know Mr. Bryson better than I do. People will make their choice. People will make their choice. They can go down the road that Mr. Allister is travelling, which is, in fact, I have been telling untruths to the committee, and that I did know something about this, or they'll decide to believe me. And at the end of the day, Mr. Allister, I'm content to let the public make their choice. But apologies, go ahead.
Yeah, when you said I believe Mr. Bryson would be able to help us, another possible explanation is that you had that confidence because you'd already seen his opening statement. Could that be possible?
No, it couldn't be, because I didn't. But I admire your gumshoe approach. And in fact, if we start where we came in, and it's good to say it again. I had no hand, act or part in the communications, but also, Madam Chairwoman, you did say you had knowledge beforehand, any of the statements, any of the relevant information. I hadn't, and I stand over what I've said several times. And I think it's true of all the members of the committee except one, that the evidence was shocking. That's not to say that the evidence is to be believed, it is to be taken and assessed, but the evidence was shocking, and the first time I heard it was the day Mr. Bryson delivered it, and then the first time I heard about the behind-scenes communications was when I was on holiday. So,
But
Mr. Officer, that's not possible.
We do know, Minister, that your party and chair had a copy of the opening statement before it was made.
Well, if you know that, good
Well,
for
we know
you.
that from the emails.
Well, good for you,
Because that's what the email address was provided for, as to where it should be sent, and it's then acknowledged as received, and references to good stuff, etc.
Good. So there's only then two things can happen. Either I saw it or didn't see it, and I've told you repeatedly that I didn't see it. But you know,
But do you think
you
our
have to-
colleagues didn't trust you?
Pardon me?
Do you think our colleagues didn't trust you?
Wouldn't that be the day? All I can tell you is that we return to where we are, and you'll make your own assessment. But we'll go around the houses and mind the dresser. But it still doesn't get us to where you want to be. You want the public to believe I had some part in this.
Well,
Didn't have any part in it.
I'm just exploring that it's a coincidence, it seems, that the author of some of these messages has had an expectation you would help. You did make a helpful contribution, but that's just a coincidence. We know that it appears your party had an advance copy of the opening statement, and you declare, I believe Mr. Bryson will be able to help us, but you didn't have sight of that opening statement.
Sorry, could the member point us to the relevant email he's referring to?
Yeah.
It might be useful.
On the 18th of September of 2028, the person presenting as Thomas G. O'Hara is I don't think these are emails, are they?
No, they're
messages of some sort.
direct messages.
Direct messages. It's direct message by Bryson saying, is there an email I could send draft of opening statement to? And a few minutes later, email hunchintom@hotmail.com.
Well, how's that evidence that Sinn Féin has it?
Well, this is the person that Mr. Mackay invited Mr. Bryson to channel his communications through.
There's evidence that an individual who may or may not have been a member of Sinn Féin had a copy. That Sinn Féin had a copy.
And evidence of some very well-informed individual who is said to be a plasterer in Portganoon received a copy at the behest of Mr. Mackay as to be the conduit for that.
Well, I'm sorry for talking across the chair, but you were suggesting earlier that Sinn Féin had a copy, that the Sinn Féin party had a copy.
Well,
I don't follow the conclusion.
It seems a reasonable belief that the chairman and this person who's presenting as Mr. O'Hara is a servant and agent of Sinn Féin, and if they had it, then Sinn Féin had it.
Well,
Just let me ask you about Mr. O'Hara.
let me ask you this. You would accept that what you consider reasonable sometimes, very rarely in here, but very occasionally, some people in here have a different view of what's reasonable and what you consider to be reasonable. Would you agree with that, Mr. Alistair?
I'm sure that's right. But
Anyway, let's
could
hope
I
that's
ask you just about Mr. O'Hara? You told the chair you never heard of him, didn't know who he was. Since this all has blown up, have you made any inquiries as to who he is?
No, have you?
Yes, I have.
Okay, who is he? He's a
Well,
plasterer in Port Glenroe, I'm told. That's
He's
the first thing
supposed to be a plasterer in Port Glenroe.
Well,
But
I'm indifferent.
are you asking the public to believe that you weren't even curious, never mind furious, within the party to find out who is this individual that's been communicating with Bryson?
And to what benefit would that be to me?
You're telling us you were neither curious nor furious enough to find that out.
I have no interest in Mr. O'Hara whatsoever, know nothing about him. The funny thing about this...
Make it your business to find out.
No, but let me just say this. See, this is the difference, Mr. Alistair, between the direction you're going into and the destination. Because if you go in the direction you're going and get on your particular wagon train and ride out in it, you're getting to a position where I knew something about this or have some involvement with it. I had no involvement with it, and it would be of no benefit to me to inquire further into the nature of this particular dialogue or communication or anything else.
Did Martin McGuinness ask you what you knew about it?
You can, just to finish this, I'm happy for you as a committee if you want to have an investigation, if you decide to do that, or ask people in when the PSNF finish to do that. But I have to tell you, and this may be a surprise to you because you're deeply interested in the communications. I've just got on with my job, and it's an important job. It has many demands on me, and when I go out and meet our friends who are trying to build businesses and trying to look after young people in our schools,
We've got that point, Minister.
When I do that, I actually find that what they're focused on is trying to build a shared and prosperous society.
Did the Deputy First Minister ask you about these matters?
For me, I will come to that, but for me, and this I understand, it's hard to know if this surprises you or not, but what you think is reasonable, sometimes isn't what the rest of us think is reasonable. But Madam Chairwoman, I have no desire to inquire further into who Mr. O'Hara is, but I'm sure it will all come out in the wash at some stage. And in terms of Mr. McGuinness, no, Mr. McGuinness didn't ask me who Mr. O'Hara was or about the
Did he
communications.
discuss this issue with you? Because Mr. McGuinness is on the public record of saying he has spoken to all relevant people about this matter, and you were probably the lead member on the committee, were you not?
Well, funny, there's a man called Dahi McKay, and he might be a bit furious if you were to say I was the lead member on the committee, no. But I certainly spoke to Sinn Féin about this and to the party whip about this by WhatsApp or whatever to the Basque Country and made it clear that I had no part, act.
And beyond that, you've never been
knowledge of.
asked by the party?
That's an interesting question because, you know, you mentioned the word trust, and I thought when they rang me up, they're going to say, you know, we need to talk more about this. So I was really pleased that when I said that, as to the public, when I said it had nothing to do with this, and it was as much a shock to me as it was to other members of the committee here, they accepted that. But then,
Of course,
Mr.
of
Allister,
course.
maybe they trust my word, and you know.
Of course, Minister, maybe it's suited to have a scapegoat in Mr. Mackay.
Well, suited who or whom?
The party.
Well, you would be getting into areas which really, I think, lead us into Mr. McKay's and Mr. O'Hara and the PSNI investigation and Sinn Féin. So, in my view, Mr. McKay made a big mistake. I don't know if he knew where it would all lead to. He, I think, took the right course of action when he resigned. I think that was the right thing to do. I heard about that. No, just to let me finish, Mr. Allister, and you can come in. I think that was the right thing to do. I don't believe that anyone in this was dealt with unfairly. I go back to what Mr. Gaddis said at the very start, Tactical Superintendent Gaddis, around the need for fairness in all these matters. And Mr. McKay, no doubt in time, will give to some authority, whether the Standards Commissioner or the PSNI, whoever his version of events. But I actually don't believe anyone was scapegoated, and it is a fact that he made a grievous mistake with real consequences. And I take on board what the chairwoman said in relation to the grievous nature of the communications, and I take on board what Mr. Smith said about undermining public confidence in these institutions. But I don't believe anyone was scapegoated. But you're going beyond my remit, because
So just to draw this together.
I try not to speak too often for others.
Just to draw this together. So though you were a key member for Sinn Féin on that committee, and Sinn Féin was keen to get Jamie Bryson's evidence in public, you want us to believe, or the public to believe, that there was no coordination of efforts amongst the Sinn Féin members on that committee to attain that objective, and that you were kept in the dark about the context with Bryson. That's what you want us to believe.
I think you put that well.
So it's a matter for the public whether or not they find that credible, along with the coincidence that the author of an email anticipated help which was given, and that you were in the dark about that. Is it also a mere coincidence, Minister, pulling up the drawbridge in this way and maintaining you knew nothing keeps you right?
Well, I go back to where we came in, Mr. Allister. I admire your crescendo. It is really like the end of Columbo, except, but Columbo at the end of the programme says, just one more thing, and he's some evidence to link the person to the wrongdoing. And unfortunately, while we have been dancing around the house and minding the dresser, you haven't done that because I had no involvement.
Well, sometimes those who are most smug fall the hardest.
Self-prophecy.
Just to finish, I do admire your chutzpah, and you've had a good run at it, but we are where we came in, Mr. Allister. I have no involvement with
With
this.
all the unanswered questions of the
And it's
coincidences,
fine.
of the
Madam
stretching
Chairwoman,
credulity things you want us to believe, and of the happy coincidence that by pulling up the drawbridge you keep yourself right.
There's an old adage that when you're losing you keep talking. So Mr. Allister wants
Well,
to
we've
interrupt
seen
me.
that today.
Mr. Allister, if Mr. Allister wants to interrupt me, Madam Chairwoman, he'll be my guest. But if he's finished, then I will finish too. And I've just put with these words now. Mr. Allister wants to interrupt. Maybe I'll interrupt now so I can say my parting words. I think the public will make a call on this, and I'm not actually sure, because you haven't got to the nub of it, Mr. Allister, about your allegation, but you've danced around it. I think the public will make a call on whether I'm telling the truth or Mr. Allister is moving in the right direction. I'm very happy with that, and I'm actually,
You go on believing that, Minister.
and I'm very happy. But also would say, Madam Chairwoman, it is important to me what members in here think, and you make your case, and you have people listen to it, and fair-minded people will make their own judgment. But maybe another day, Mr. Allister and I will get to talk more about his relationship with Jamie Bryson. But
Okay,
Nothing to
right,
talk
we're going to
about.
move on
That's for another day.
to because I think we've aired that already, so Claire Hannah.
Okay, thank you very much, and I am sorry we kept you waiting. I'm sorry because there were a lot.
My time is your time.
A lot of issues that we had scheduled for discussion as well beyond this, and we wanted to have a wider discussion on NAMA, and a lot of issues around rating, some things that we'll agree with, and some very serious questions about the budget process and the fact that, given the schedule we've been given, that the entire scrutiny part of the budget process is going to be written out, which is against the legislation, and I think it is related to some of the transparency issues that coaching and NAMA and so on undermine in the public. I'm not going to go over the ground that other members have covered. I don't have the legal training. I've never even seen Colombo or LA Law, so I don't feel equipped. I know a well-spent childhood, and I haven't had an opportunity.
Probably the most shocking thing we've heard today.
I know. Get the headlines there. But I haven't seen the full transcript. For the record, that's the first time I saw the full transcripts today as well. So I just want to pick up on a couple of slightly related issues. I know you were in San Sebastian. I don't know if your local newsagent stocked the Irish News, but when did you become aware that these transcripts and messages existed?
I think the same as everyone else. The wonderful thing of the modern world we live in is that you can listen to Stephen Nolan if you're 1,000 miles away or 1,500 miles away, whatever it is, to the Rusty San Sebastian. So I'm the same as everyone else, Ms. Hannah. The news. It's not actually that often during the sleepy days of summer that we are woken from our summer slumber in this part of the world. But around that same time, so I can't remember, was it the night before, was it that morning, did it break? But I think I found out, and I didn't have the same connection with everyone else, but I found out the unravelling story around that time.
Okay, yes, you obviously, I was away that week as well, so I didn't attend the meeting you're talking about. You obviously had a better internet connection than I was, so I just want to clarify, it was either the night before when the Irish News went online or that day. It wasn't further in advance than that you...
Well, it couldn't be, Miss Hannah. It couldn't be, or else I've been telling untruths to the committee. So you make your call in that one, and I have said repeatedly, but there's no harm in repeating it again, because my time is your time. I had no knowledge, not only beforehand, but as I said in several interviews afterwards, no knowledge afterwards either, that this story was going to break in any way. So I've said that before, but I think it's fair to put it on record again that I found out around the same time as everyone else. And I can't remember what morning that was. Was it during the week? But good luck with that.
I'm not sufficiently trained or television to badger a witness, so I'll leave it at that. Just to pick up, what steps did your party take to establish who was and wasn't party to those communications?
Well, those are questions for Sinn Féin, and I'm very happy if you want to ask Sinn Féin. You want to have number one, you want to have an investigation, and you'll make your own call on that in relation to Mr O'Hara, Mr Bryce and Mr Mackay and their communications. Madam Chairman, you make your own call on that. And if you have an investigation and you wish to invite Sinn Féin in to go through the detail of how they responded, that's a matter you can bring up with them. But I'm not here as Finance Minister. I'm doing you the respect and courtesy of answering the issues which are, as the chairperson said, are serious issues around my involvement with the issue. The fact that, as I said, I didn't know about it, but I can't help you with the father question of Sinn Féin. But I mean, if it's your call, you want to invite someone in from Sinn Féin who can answer that, be my guest.
But just to confirm, you took that call from the whip, and that was the only the extent of the formal discussion, because I know, again, the Deputy First Minister has said that the party conducted an inquiry to establish who was and wasn't party to the communications, but your involvement of that was limited to that phone call.
Isn't it wondering and endearing how much Sinn Féin trust me? But certainly, I mean, I was out of the country. But I made my position clear, and I think that the test of time has shown that no one else was involved in this matter other than Mr Mackay. Mr O'Hara, I'm not sure what his involvement was, but that is where it rested. So I can't help you any more than that.
Have you spoken to Mr Mackay since this story broke? Yeah. Okay, I just wanted just a very slightly divergent issue, and I know you raised it as well, and you had given a little bit of leeway because
It's not about the renewable heating standard.
share, well, we could come to that, but I suppose people are somewhat on the clock. I share completely your anger and frustration about NAMA and about the divergent way that debtors were treated, whether they're an individual with negative equity or whether they were a developer. I do think that is all rooted in the monumentally stupid vote in the Dáil in February 2011 for the bank guarantee that I regret that your party voted for, and I think it has deteriorated from there. But I just wanted to pick up, because this committee does have an interest specifically, not in the €200 million that Project Eagle apparently lost the Irish taxpayer, but in some of the political issues related to it and what involvement this Assembly had before your time. But just want to clarify, have you instructed department officials to prepare papers, etc., in advance of any request from an inquiry that may or may not be established by this committee or by the Public Accounts Committee?
Well, I must be allowed to have a small riposte to that. When I was on the committee, I asked several times for NAMA to cooperate, and unfortunately your sister party, the Labour Party, I know you're not in the Dáil, but your sister party, along with Fine Gael, resisted stoutly any efforts to help the investigation we were trying to make into NAMA, and I'm delighted that they've come to their senses and now say there should be a commission of investigation. What I have said in terms of the commission of investigation, which, and I think there was a little bit in the news yesterday about the Taoiseach having agreed now, I still haven't seen the criteria, the terms of reference, is that my department will be cooperating in a very fulsome manner. And in that regard, when people say there can't be an all-island inquiry, what I would say is certainly my department will cooperate very gladly with any commission of inquiry. And you say about the papers, you can be sure of one thing, people know where the papers are now because the NCA has asked for them and come back and ask for more and so on. So whatever about the next investigation and the direction it takes, I think you would expect me to, and I think members would expect me to, make sure that there are no hidden corners in the Department of Finance. The NCA has been there already, and I think they have full cooperation of my officials who I've met several times, and this, of course, I've met the NCA as well. So we are ready and waiting, and we have some influence over the criteria. I do hope the criteria takes up the offer I have made about giving full cooperation to investigation.
Okay, I don't speak for Labour, but they did have the good sense not to vote to put those thousands of millions of euro onto the public balance sheet. But just have you made any representations to the Office of First and Deputy First Minister about their engagement or knowledge of the NAMA and the sale, and any phone call notes or anything? Have you made any representations in that area?
No.
Okay, just finishing up, we've been reviewing evidence. Have you had the opportunity to review Mary Lou McDonald's contributions in the Dáil and in public accounts?
No.
Very good. But would you agree with me that some of the points that she made contradict slightly the stance that your party took last week in watering down through amending and voting for a motion that called for full transparency?
I feel they were going somewhat off-piste here, but Minister,
we had an invisible man earlier. I was asked and I had contact with the invisible man, but I can't comment upon your comments which I didn't see. You told me it was 10 hours. If you want to send the appropriate pieces to me, I'll come back and answer that question.
Okay, Jerry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And thank you, Minister.
Right, you're welcome.
I think you have defended your position very, very admirably.
There's not a but in this, Jerry. I hope there's not a but.
Maybe. I think you've protested your innocence very, very robustly. I think at the very outset you said the only stepping you'd be doing would be stepping up. But I think, what I have at least have taken out of this meeting this evening, if anything, is that there are a number of things that we cannot ignore. One is that from the emails or the Twitter messages or whatever manner of means these things came, that you were directly implicated in them. I think you'll agree to that, wouldn't you?
We'll come back on that. The word implication, we'll ask Jim Alistair to interpret what implication means, but keep going.
Yeah. The other thing, Minister, is that Mr Mackay or Mr Mackay, whatever you want to call him, he resigned. And I think your submission is you inferred that Mr Mackay or Mr Mackay resigned willingly and that he resigned and done the right thing by doing so. But my point would be that, you know, further to that, 18 people from your members of your party resigned. So to me, that gives me the impression that he did not resign willingly. So, you know, how do you defend your decision that he made the right decision, or would it be that he was made resign? Because I mean, it's all about the public perception, and I'm not here, and I hope you don't take any inference of guilt that I'm making any accusations in any way. But what I would say is that, you know, the coaching of Mr. Bryson did bring up a lot of questions among the general public, and you know, through those questions, and I've mentioned the fact that, you know, Mr. Mackay resigned, and those 18 people then from your party followed that by resigning as well, and the fact that you have been directly mentioned in the emails. That has a potential, I believe, to undermine your credibility. And that's my fear, that's my worry, and that's the point I'm making.
Okay, I'm actually not going to tempt Jim Allis by asking him to define implicated, but as I said earlier, as far as I'm concerned, it's the same as two men in the bar saying that I should be or would be or might be involved in something. Regardless of what the Twitter exchange or email exchange, I knew nothing about it, but I agree with you. These are serious matters. I think we'll go with maybe we'll call him Dahi, so we're going to have to worry about McKay or Mackay. There might be a wee opening there for the SDLP in North Antrim, you know. Maybe you would. Maybe this might be a silver lining in this for the SDLP. But generally, I think that Dahi did do the right thing. I believe that when you make a mistake as grievous as that and as grave as that, you have a choice of falling on your own sword or trying to brazen it out, and I think he made the right decision. I believe it was his decision to make, but there may be a day, and you know, as I said earlier, the PSNI inquiry is the most important part of all this, which hangs over Mr. Mackay, but those are my views on it. And if it hurts my credibility that people left Sinn Féin in North Antrim, so be it. I have to stand on my own reputation and credibility and take whatever knocks are there and keep on going.
Minister, I think you may have been misinterpreting maybe something I said in terms of your credibility. I'm not meaning the credibility by your own members. I mean the general public, because of the fact that you know, you were directly implicated in the messages, and I think the one that said that, you know, try to get Martin to say something, even let him see how comprehensive the document is, so he knows it's not bullshit. I think that, you know, is very, very serious, and it does, you know, doesn't do you any favours, I would imagine. No. And you know, I do make the point again that, taking into account all of these matters, that it leaves you in a very, very vulnerable, if not difficult, position.
Well, Jerry, thanks for that. The chair's worried about my anger. Claire was suggesting I would be angry as well, and frustrated or furious. I think you're entitled to your opinion, but I have to say that it's now October 5th, I guess. October 5th.
Don't ask me.
Well, someone in this gathering knows what date it is, and this broke in October. This broke in August 18th, 19th, and I'm feeling pretty good. So I don't feel particularly vulnerable or exposed on this matter, but you know, I appreciate your views. You're entitled to them, and we'll see. I think this isn't finished, and Mr. Geddes, Detective Superintendent Geddes, has a big part to play in where this particular issue goes next. But there's a lot of people worried about me today, but I feel pretty good.
Thank you, Minister. I believe that the general public find it hard to believe that you had nothing or didn't know anything regarding all of this. And I just would conclude by saying that I certainly find it very difficult to believe. So if I find it difficult to believe, you know, a lot of people out there in the public domain I'm quite sure would find it difficult to believe as well.
Well, you know, you might have a wee bit of a party political bias there, but we're going to set that to the side, and you're entitled to your opinion, Madam Chairwoman. But sure, we'll see how it plays.
Okay, Jim Wells.
Madam Chair, there's been no coaching or collusion here, but Jim Allister has basically asked all my questions. So I have nothing I can add to.
Check their phones.
There has been no collusion, it's just as it happened. That's the disadvantage of coming in late. I don't think I have anything to add to the questions.
Okay, Ross.
Thank you. Minister, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Ross.
I was frightened for a while there sitting to your right because you glare at me. You know, but the 5th of October is the date, apparently. Detective Superintendent Geddes, at the outset, you're well aware of what he has said to us and how we should approach this. In relation to Jimmy Bryson himself, there's no doubt that the revelations that he made were probably in the public interest. Would you agree with that? I mean, were you shocked by the revelations?
Well, I was, and I think they were in the public interest, but no one's under any illusions that this guy is motivated by his hatred of the DUP, and that was put in a balance, and I'm on record as saying that his politics, I've always said, leave me cold, and I think I actually say, when he's given evidence, I said, how do we know to believe you, or is it not just that you're motivated by your spite and your animus towards the DUP? But yes, I was shocked by the evidence, and I told you I had to be in the room, and it's clear that my colleagues in the unionist ranks were shocked by the vehemence of the evidence as well. That's not to say the evidence is true. That's a different call. But it was a big news day, Ross. There's no doubt about that.
You are aware of the documents that we have in front of us that have been forwarded by Jim Allister are slightly more than the Irish News had in their possession. There's also an inference that there might actually be more. There is actually something more missing.
Yeah. I caught that earlier. I didn't know that, but I caught that. I've never actually seen the entire correspondence anywhere, but you can be sure people have pointed out the relevant pieces to me. But I heard that earlier, and I don't understand entirely the relevance of that, but it does seem to be important.
I think you made a comment yourself earlier, hidden corners. And this is perhaps a fear that I would have, that another hidden corner will approach us rather than us approaching it, and something else will appear. But there seems to be a hidden paper trail, and from that, clearly, we will at some point get more information out. There's no doubt when you do read through this, there's inferences, and I make that very, very clear. There's inferences rather than statements of fact. Try to get Martin to say something in the meeting. Let Martin see the papers. And you have made it crystal clear that you did not at any time see these. You've also said that Thomas O'Hara, the name means nothing to you. You asked the question of Mr. Allister, I think, did he know anything about Mr. O'Hara? I have to say I didn't. And during the meeting, I looked him up on the internet. And apparently he did address your Ardèche fairly recently. So he obviously had an association with Sinn Féin as a member, and he would have been one of the ones referred to by Jerry who resigned or was asked to go. That obviously has a ripple effect, shall we say, the fact that he clearly is associated with the party. You, unfortunately, are being tainted by that same brush.
Well, I think those are all fair points, and you know, I don't think it's a matter of being angry, but it is a matter of having to go out and fight your corner, and that's why I come out so robustly in regard to these matters. And you talk about the hidden corners. I didn't catch the entire conversation, but there is a suggestion maybe there are other parts of this correspondence that might be interesting, and something might jump up and bite us in the bum. But I know this: nothing is going to bite me in the bum in relation to this particular correspondence, communication or dialogue, because I had no part in it. So we wait. Will there be light shed on our further revelations, Ross? I don't know, but for me, it's important in terms of the discussions happening here, because these are grievous allegations, but it will be academic, because there's nothing going to come out that's going to link me in any way to the sorry saga.
Okay. Oh, thank you for your patience. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And no other members? Oh, sorry, John Woodard. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
I believe you were absent the last few meetings here, so
I was actually-
I'm glad you attended.
I was actually just looking up Twitter to see, because Miss Hannah was referring that she wasn't around when the allegations were first exposed in the Irish News, and she wasn't, but I note that the Wi-Fi must have been quite good on her holidays, because she notes that first week she goes on holiday, she sits and watches the committee in a cafe. I can assure you I was on holidays and I didn't watch the committee in the cafe. But we've been going round circles here for possibly 2.5 hours, members have been trying to pin some sort of association with yourself and what happened between Mr. Bryson, Mr. O'Hara and Mr. McKay at that time. Would the Minister be surprised when I read out to him what actually the remit of this committee is? As previously advised, in considering the issue, the committee should be mindful of the scope of its remit. The committee has roles in relation to scrutiny, policy development, consultation and legislation with respect to the Department of Finance. As members of the committee will be aware, it is not within the remit of the committee to investigate the conduct of the Assembly members. Does the Minister believe that we could have spent the last 2.5 hours more productively?
I think this is a very good investment of my time, and it's nice of you, John, to come to one of the meetings and stand up for me. But nothing surprises me in politics, and as the Chair said, I may have wandered off-piste occasionally in some of my answers, but this wasn't going to be discussed in 40 minutes, and I'm glad we let the officials go. But we do have urgent issues to discuss around the rates and the budget. We'll come back to those. I said I was the first minister to appear in front of a committee, I think, when I was appointed, and I said I would like to made a little hostage to fortune. I said I'd like to come back often. So we've had a good couple of hours here. Could it have been spent more productively? That's a matter for the committee. But I hope that we can get into our diaries a discussion around the budgets and the rates in the time ahead, and some of the other issues, in particular the issues around what the British Chancellor said yesterday around what the autumn statement might look like. But it's how could you spend time with such great company and be disappointed with your investment of your time, John?
Right. Okay. I leave it at that. In my opinion, look, the committee has a role to play, and I have no objections to the committee bringing yourself forward or anyone else forward in this regard. I don't believe the last 2.5 hours have been productive, however. We could have spent our time much more productively as was previously arranged. 1 hour on this subject and the rest of the time spent discussing rates, budgets and other important matters which relate to people's lives. But the day has come and gone, and we will return to that.
Trina?
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming to the committee, even when you didn't need to try, and I know that from the outset you've said you want to build a strong relationship, and I welcome that. But just as a final, could you clarify if your department is going to work and cooperate with every single investigation and agency, whether it's in the south of Ireland or NCA? Because some of the members here don't seem to have heard that, and I think it might be useful for them to hear it again.
Well, Rumi, I'll go to TG Cahir, because Dúirt me seo, Madam Chairman, I did an interview with TG Cahir where I said, which you may not have caught, I admit, Chairwoman.
We didn't guess it, could understand it.
I'm watching it else.
It's probably more riveting than the committee meetings. But we said, I said from day one, our department will and is cooperating. And when I met the NCA in the Lisburn Civic Centre, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, they remain in contact. They continue to seek additional pieces of information or clarification. We're providing that at every turn. And maybe I should also say, Katrina, what I said in the Assembly, that the FBI, the SEC, the NCA, the PSNI and Garda, Síochána and now a Commission of Investigation, or indeed this committee, they will not have any hidden corners, Ross, to use that term. There will be no hidden corners in my department, present or past, in relation to the NAMA Cerberus deal. Anything and everything will be available, but it will be available first to the law enforcement agencies, and then we'll take a call. But as you do know, I released additional information. There were some redactions. We've replaced those. I released the name of one of Mr Wilson's nominees, and anything else the committee has asked for, I try to be as helpful as possible. So you can be rest assured that, and I hope the Commission does ask for the cooperation of my department, because sometimes, and I think we found this with NAMA, that they didn't, I think, give due cognizance to the steps that we were making to try and get to the bottom of the deal. And of course the deal has come back to haunt NAMA. You know, they dismissed the questions were being put. I can't remember, it was 2015 when this inquiry started, or the investigation. They dismissed those questions, and Tubby being bitten in the bum, those questions and the issues we raised have really come back again and again to haunt NAMA. So I do hope that the Commission of Investigation, as well as the law enforcement agency, I hope they do request my assistance and my department's assistance, and if they do, they will receive it.
Okay, I want to thank the Minister for giving his time today. I know sometimes it has been a bit rocky, and other times a bit smoother, but I think all members of the committee do appreciate you coming along. I think the Minister has probably put it best when he said and referred to the witness at the centre of all of this as an empty vessel, and I think the question that everybody's trying to get at is who was filling that vessel. And that is not to say that perhaps some of what he has said was right or wrong, but it also is the risk that some of it was wrong. And, you know, the fact that we have at the very heart of this a very serious admission that he was willing to mislead a committee inquiry, and that is something that I know everybody around the table will want to ensure does not and never does happen moving forward. So there are very serious issues here, but we do appreciate you coming along and putting on the record, and we look forward to hearing the further investigations and the outcomes of those. But absolutely, we will want to, I'm sure, reschedule. I'm actually sure after all of this you probably didn't want to speak for an hour on rates and everything else, but we will reschedule that, and I know members are very keen to talk about those issues such as the business rates and reform the civil service and other relevant issues around the budget. So we will be writing to you on that, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members.
Okay, do members want to take a quick comfort break? About 2 minutes?
Is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 29.
And do any members have any comments to make in relation to the evidence session? Everybody talked out?
I don't think it revealed very much.
The only thing, Chair, is that the Minister did refer to Mr O'Hara. I know he was probably doing it tongue-in-cheek. And again, I'm not sure, A, what benefit, and B, what remit we have, but certainly, obviously the Minister talked well and loud for a good couple of hours there, and certainly any challenges to him he refuted. And perhaps, I suppose as a committee, not that we don't take the Minister's word for everything that he said, but it would be good to get a check and balance, and maybe it might be worthwhile to take the likes of Mr O'Hara and inquire if he would come to the committee and maybe ask a question, as when he wrote on his Twitter or his tweets about the Finance Minister. Was that just something off his own back, or was there something more to it than that? That may well be useful and beneficial for the committee to hear that from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Well, I suppose there's a number of issues around that. First of all, the committee doesn't have an inquiry into this and is being investigated elsewhere, so we don't really have terms of reference in terms of adjudicating whether it's outside or inside of it. I suppose secondly, from a practical point of view, we know very little about Mr O'Hara. How do we contact him?
I understand his Twitter is now closed down. One option may be, if we want to do that, would be to contact Sinn Féin to see if they have a contact for him. Not sure if either of our members know Mr. O'Hara.
Leading the witnesses, maybe.
But, so I think there's some practical issues, but I'm open to discussion with the committee.
Well, I think, Chair, that I appreciate, I've no doubt the Minister may have been saying it slightly tongue-in-cheek, but I think it's a suggestion worth following up. And again, it's within the terms of reference of this committee, but we were having the conversation with the Minister, and I suppose to complete the circle, there may be value in it, whether we can locate Mr. O'Hara, whether we can get him along, whether he'd be willing to come along. I mean, all these here are questions, but why not let's at least try and ask those questions.
Well, I think there's certainly an issue about missing messages, and he was obviously one part of that exchange. There's no doubt as well, we're very unclear, and certainly from the evidence that's been given, we don't know whether Mr. O'Hara worked for Dathai and therefore was answerable to him, or worked for Sinn Féin. And I think there is a big difference there in terms of the briefing and information to other members of the committee, including the Minister. We didn't get a satisfactory answer. Apparently, the Minister has never heard of this person. Presumably the Sinn Féin inquiry has identified who he works for and where he is. But I would say, though, that it is a matter for this committee to agree, but it would stray into further investigations. And we had indicated in the committee that we were going to defer to the Commissioner and to the police investigation on this issue. So, it is up to the committee. I know, John, sorry, you wanted to come in as well.
Yeah, well, I would like to see terms of reference, because we are heading towards an inquiry. We're starting to call witnesses in relation to this matter. I have a list of witnesses I would like to question, including current and former members of this committee, former and current employees of current and former members of this committee. I would like to question Mr. Allister, for instance. What were the meetings between him and Mr. Bryson about, leading up to the committee hearing? I would like to question Mr. Allister's current assistant, Mr. Morrison, in relation to why he held on to evidence which could be very well useful to the PSNI and to this committee for 6 weeks. I would like to question, as I say, the former members of the committee as to who and had they any information or meetings with or contact with Mr. Bryson. So we're going to do all that. I want to see a terms of reference.
A very good question, Mr. O'Dowd, about what he's discovered about Mr. O'Hara.
I'm more than happy to take be a witness to the committee, but I want to see a terms of reference.
Well, so his question here is that, okay, first of all, the committee can ask the clerk to look at terms of reference for a possible investigation / inquiry. Secondly, the committee could decide that the most appropriate person to carry that out would be the Commissioner. And the Commissioner has made a decision, of course, that the police inquiry is ongoing and he will not look at it until after that. Presumably he gets some sort of an indication from that. Now, my understanding was previously the committee had said, look, we've taken some evidence. We'd heard from some advices that this is an investigation into individuals and that would be better left with the Commissioner. Am I hearing an appetite to change that?
Chair, my only concern is that we've started the process to a degree. We've had the Minister here today, and he said what he's had to say, and we can go, okay, fair enough. We hear what the Minister's had to say. We take him at his word, no doubt. But I think that there is benefit in taking that further. At the end of the day, this is about what happened at maybe not this committee, but its former iteration. And I do think that there is benefit in pursuing this, and I understand that I wouldn't be wanting to stray into either a criminal investigation nor into the investigation that the Commissioner is underway into individuals. I think this is about looking at how this committee, I suppose, operated in the round and what happened there. I mean, we've talked to the Minister about his involvement in it, and I think it would be of value to try and, as I say, close that circle in terms of getting from some of the other key people just exactly what happened and how this committee was found wanting, because that's the bottom line. And trying to instill, as I've said from the very start, get public confidence back into what we're doing here.
I always think the slippery slope argument is the weakest of all arguments, that because we've taken the step of questioning the Minister, we should go on and do anything else. I think the Minister, there is a legitimate issue there. The Minister is the Minister in the Department with responsibility now for NAMA, and that was part of our discussions at the time about asking them to come along. There's clearly lots of associated, there's no doubt about that, because, you know, even in terms of the information Jim has supplied, there are very serious accusations there which I think go at the heart of whether or not a witness lied to the inquiry. And then that in turn has an impact upon the integrity of that evidence and the integrity of that report. I suppose the question is, and we can take the clerk's advice, and as we had previous advice, one option may be that the clerk's again, you know, the clerk looks at this again and brings back advice for next week around what is or isn't within the scope of this. My fear would be that many of those witnesses may be outside what they would deem to be outside the scope and would simply refuse to come along for that purpose, even if we could track them down. But it is a matter, you know, it is a matter for the committee.
But I think if we ask a question, I think it's back to the, you know, the public are looking at this committee in terms of what it cannot achieve. We've had a conversation today, and you know, I think to say, okay, we've heard what the Minister's had to say, let's move on and talk about rates or whatever else. I think people will sort of say, will honestly say, you know, is that it? Is that as far as you're going to go here? And I do think we need to make that effort. And whether if and I would certainly propose then that the clerk come back next week with some suggestions and proposals to how we could proceed on this, because I do think it would assist both our credibility and also put to bed some of the issues that were raised today. And I'm sure the Minister may well welcome that, to allow him to be vindicated, the comments that he made today. And if we can't find the likes of Mr O'Hara, or they refuse to come along and talk to us for whatever reason, well, at least we've made the effort.
I mean, this issue.
Sorry, John indicated just before you, so I'll bring you in after John. But I don't know. I just think we need to be very careful about disappearing down a rabbit hole, and I actually do think, particularly in terms of the discussion that will go on, if we are going to look at a different line of inquiry, and there is going to be, there will be time dedicated to that. I do think a great deal of people out there care about business rates, and can we make improvements to that and about other issues. And we can plug up our workload in terms of these types of issues that, yes, the media are very interested in, and we'll get a bit of coverage here and there, but I think we have to come back to the issue of what it is that we want to achieve. And is the Commissioner and the police investigation the best place to achieve in the first instance what happened around this, and then there's going to be lessons learned to us. Sorry, John, I'm going to bring you.
No, other than to reiterate my point, if the committee's gone down the road of calling witnesses, it's an inquiry. If it's an inquiry, let's see the terms of reference and let's do it right.
Okay, Johnny?
Yeah, I think the issue was forced upon the committee by the revelations which were done by, I think a lot of people acknowledge now, some expert journalism that brought out that the then committee member had been involved in coaching. And the big point that we had was the two people involved were Danny Mihai as chairman of the committee, and a Sinn Féin member who is now the finance minister, and the role and his mention in the communications that were brought back and forward. It was entirely right that we should do it. I think the public should be aware that the National Crime Agency, it's known, have to remain confidential, their briefings to us, but it's known that they have been briefing us and they are undertaking an investigation, and they should be allowed to continue that investigation with all support and with all speed and unimpeded. Secondly, the Commissioner is awaiting, as I understand it, the outcome of the investigations being taken forward by the Serious Crime Agency in connection with the coaching. So the committee was left with two options. One was with an MLA and former chairman of this committee has held up his hands and resigned. And then that left the questions that have been asked. I don't know if we can ask any more questions. I think all the questions we have been put to the Minister, and it's up to the public the judge the answers to those. Now, what do we have currently? We have currently got a serious crime investigation ongoing into the nature of the coaching. And we also have a National Crime Agency investigation into NAMA. And what is happening is, throughout, even right up until today, at the last moments, we get police advice, leaving it sort of, it's up to the committee to decide what they ask, but we would be asked them to be careful and cognizant and different things. I think into the future, we have to let the Serious Crime Agency do their job. We have to let the Commissioner do their job. The committee has asked the questions that had to be asked. Of the two, one individual has resigned, and the Minister has been asked the questions, and it's up to the public to judge upon the answers to those. So what now is the role of the committee in advance of hearing back from the Serious Crime Agency? When they're finished, then the Commissioner will do their job, and the National Crime Agency will do their job. Now, is there anything outside of that that would dissatisfy the public if we weren't to do anything further? And I think we have to wait to see the outcomes of the serious crime investigation, the coaching, firstly. Secondly, see the outcome of the Commissioner for Public Standards. And I've raised some of those issues here today. I know we got deflected down into other areas, but I've raised the questions which will, as the Minister acknowledged, be pursued by the Commissioner for Public Standards and the NCA. And I think we should then collate all of that information before we decide what way we're going to go forward.
Okay.
Chair, just one final point on this here. I mean, I know we have obviously the paper from the clerk, and it's been alluded to about the wider issues, and the clerk has produced quite a detailed paper with proposals. I know it's in closed session, which I have to say, Chair, is an issue I'm concerned about, because whilst I'm more than content to have some conversation about it in closed session, I do think we need to have some sort of conclusion in the open here, and I would hope that we can do that. But I'm happy to fold in what I've been talking here about into that discussion later on. Maybe that may be the more appropriate method, as long as I say, and I'm sure other members would share my concern, that as long as there is some element of public aspect of that once we've had some initial discussion in closed session.
It's up to members. Sorry, I know Jim wants in. Go ahead.
So, Chair, it's just in relation to inquiries, it would be normal procedure for committees to consider draft terms of reference in closed session, as it would draft reports. So, I mean, that's not falling outside the normal terms of reference or the normal procedure for any other inquiry that the committee would be undertaking.
And Chair, I accept that there. My only concern was that normally, maybe it's just my lack of knowledge is relatively new here, but to me reading that as closed session and then finishing home, whereas normally we have discussions in closed session, then we come back into public session again, where the public can actually see what's been concluded and what we've actually discussed, with anything that was private and confidential, obviously done in the closed session.
I mean, there is a questions now 5 to 6, and I'm not sure sort of what members' sort of evening activities are. In terms of some people have meetings. I know certainly I have meetings tonight as well. I know Jim's indicated he wants in, but Katrina?
Well, first of all, the Minister wasn't here as part of an inquiry. He was here as a courtesy to the committee. And I just think we need to be very careful. Philip, you seem to think that we were having an inquiry there. And I know the Chair at one point talked about a witness. He wasn't a witness. He was the Minister coming to the Scrutiny Committee. We agreed we weren't doing an inquiry because the Commissioner was carrying it out, and there's also the PSNI. But in fact, I remember we had a discussion about the committee made a decision to refer, and I voted against it because I do believe it was a witch hunt, refer the Minister to the Commissioner. Well, now that we have more revelations about a member of this current committee who did meet with Jamie Bryson, and he admitted it today, and also we have the email, the admission that the email, well, maybe we need to, the committee need to write to the PSNI and the Commissioner saying that they would expect that all avenues and everyone involved in this needs to be investigated. And if you remember, I put that. I said all members of the previous committee and anyone who had anything to do with this. So we can spend our time. We've spent 2.5 hours today. And I'll tell you what the people out there are talking about. Making ends meet. Budgets. They're worried about Brexit and the impact on budget. They're worried about sterling and that it's now at its lowest ebb ever. They're worried about can they afford to put food on the table. Now, we're the Finance Committee of Stormont. Why don't we let the agencies who are... I mean, today, with respect, Chair, sometimes I felt you were the Commissioner for Standards by the way you were asking questions. I know you will say that you were doing your job, but I mean, we have a Commissioner who was appointed in the right way to do that job, and they have their job to do. So let them do their job. We have a police service that gets very well paid for the job that they're supposed to be doing. Let them do it. We have an NCA that are supposed to be doing their job. Let them do it. A lot of public money is going into all these agencies to do this work. And what we're doing is sitting in the committee thinking that we're in a court of law, listening to barristers and senior counsels, thinking they're acting in a court of law. This is not a court of law. This is a finance committee. Now let's do our job.
And to be fair, Katrina, I made it clear in terms of discussions about this that I felt that both in relation to this matter and in relation to the substantive NAMA issues, we said this in the Chamber, said this repeatedly to this committee, I completely agree with you. I think there's organisations there and that they should be left to do that. Now, the committee agreed that we would take evidence on this issue. And once we agree to do that, then we will move forward and do the job that we need to do. And our job here is to scrutinise and to question those issues, which is exactly what I've been doing. But there is appropriate procedures, and I'm not sure if you're speaking in relation to both members there, like Jonathan was. But this is a question of principle about what is the role of this committee, what it is that we can achieve, how do we balance public expectation versus letting the appropriate agencies get on and do the work that they need to do. And I think there is a difference, and Katrina, that's why I'm drawing a difference in terms of Philip's suggestion between a minister who currently has responsibility for NAMA and we have a role to scrutinise versus the other people involved in this, such as Dathie and this man O'Hara, and the investigations ongoing with them. So my suggestion here would be that we do leave this to the police and to the Commissioner to investigate, as it will later on when we talk about the substantive NAMA issues, to let the NCA get on and investigate this. And I've been very consistent on that.
Chair, there's been other comments made here this afternoon, which, as MLAs, we are in contact with constituents on a regular basis and people who come to us about issues not even related to this. And by even making a suggestion that you've met somebody not even associated with this issue and trying to link it to it creates a bigger problem. And that is somewhere we have to draw a line. We have to say, and the Minister at committee did make reference to the fact that he had already had meetings with Gareth Graham and associated with his property portfolio, and that was, he made that quite clear and said that at committee and was upfront about that, so there's no issue about that. He met him as a constituent representing him in relation to difficulties he was encountering with that issue. That was said at committee back in July of not even July, it could be the end of June 2015, and at that stage, and that's on record. So I'm saying that each and every one of us, and the mention has been made about Jim having met with Mr. Bryson about other issues,
yes.
And I'm sure many of us have had conversations with many other people associated with other things who have been brought in front of committees, including the PIC, within this house. So I think we're straying into areas which are totally out of our remit, and I don't think we should be.
I say, at the end of the day, Jim has raised issues about me in the past, and I felt, and I've articulated this, I felt it's been grossly unfair because I do come to this with completely clean hands. I think we do bandy about conflict of interest, or perception of, it's not even a conflict of interest, perceptions of conflict of interest perhaps too easily. And
as John and I think John articulated this probably clear, and that once you start into that, who hasn't been involved at some point of previous committee members or people who are in the same party off or people who have met with Mr. Bryson or other witnesses, and it becomes very, very complicated. So I agree with you on that. I think we need to be very careful that we don't. I would refer to it as sort of you fall down various rabbit holes into different types of inquiries. It actually takes us away from what it is that we're supposed to be doing. I do think, though, and I agree with Philip on this, that some of this is very key to the work of committees. The idea of, I think it goes above and beyond simply just meeting with or speaking to, or there are serious issues here. But I suppose the question is, who's the best person to investigate that? Is it us? Will we be able to get the relevant witnesses here, or do we leave that and get a further indication? We've had the briefing, and I'll not say on the record the substance of that, but we've had that from the PSNI with some indications. So we could revisit this and we can schedule that in within a relatively short period of time to take a look at this, say, like, do we decide to go for something a bit more detailed, but in the meantime we wait for further information?
Well, I think, Chair, I know we've got the item later in the agenda, and that may well cover all aspects of it. I appreciate there are two simultaneous investigations underway by two different organisations in terms of the two issues at hand, and I suppose it's whether we want to, as other agencies have done, take those apart, or whether we're happy to fold all these issues in. Obviously that depends on the terms of reference and what's agreed later in the agenda, if it's agreed at all. But I'm not sure whether there doesn't seem to be too many people agreeing with me that we need to progress this. But I do feel that there are things that we could do to close some of the information gaps, and I think it is important that those conversations are had in an open and transparent fashion, because whilst I appreciate the Commissioners doing their bit, police are doing their bit, it's all done behind closed doors, understandably.
And there's a reason for that.
Well,
I think this is what we need to get our heads around, that there is a reason for that, and it is to protect the process. And it's been a long-held reason. I don't know, from my point of view, like, at the end of the day, I respect the police. I respect their opinion whenever they say to us, look, we think it's risky to do this. And I know other members, and I suppose I found it quite surprising that some people have this appetite to disregard that advice from the police, because I certainly aren't privy to, and I don't know all the detail about their investigations and what they need to do. But if they're telling us that don't look at this issue at the moment, that's something I would give serious consideration to. And I know, sorry, you've come in a number of times, I think Jim had indicated.
I just want to be brief. I think some members are conflating two issues. There's what we've been doing today with the Minister, and then there's the issue we've yet to discuss, separate issue of whether we're going forward on the me and Nama issues. I'm quite clear the Minister was not here as a witness. We do not have an inquiry that he was here on foot of. And indeed, if we set up an inquiry with terms of reference, we'd have to bring him back as a witness, I would have thought, along with whoever else. So surely he was here because the committee had taken a view that he should have stood down while the other investigations were going on, and that was the basis upon which he was invited here to discuss the matters giving rise to that. That I don't think ever was in the category of an inquiry. I think that was in the category.
No, that's my clear recollection of. Sorry, I refer to witness about.
Yeah.
It wasn't specifically.
Twice.
I think somebody's here to as a witness to give evidence is what I meant, as opposed to in a formalised way. So don't read anything into my referring to as witness. Sorry, I think Paul wanted in just before Claire indicated.
No more.
No, okay. Claire.
Well, yeah, no, I think you're probably right, and I think we exhausted that thing. But I think it's a fair point that we have started a discussion about the kind of, I suppose, the processes around witness stuff. So it can't do any harm to maybe scope out what we could pick up but not kind of put it on ice maybe for the time being, but perhaps do scope out if we were to pick it up what the terms might be.
I think there's no harm in revisiting some of the previous advice about
Certainly.
terms of reference. Yeah.
Yeah, Chair, this briefing was on the basis of advice previously provided to the committee, and my recollection and understanding of that advice was that the committee could legitimately call the minister within its terms of reference. However, the advice was different in relation to other parties, that, you know, that it may fall into investigation and it is unlikely to fall within the terms of reference. So although I'm happy to do whatever the committee asks and go and get advice, I can't see how the advice that I would bring would differ in any way from the advice previously given to the committee, unless any member could come up with a suggestion for a terms of reference that members thought would fall within the committee's remit.
The previous
And then it would possibly be more appropriate for me to go out and see if that fits in with the previous advice given. And of course, then there would be the suggestion of the need for legal advice on that as well. However, you know, for me to go away and bring advice, it's likely to be the same advice that
Did
came
the previous
last.
advice suggest we couldn't speak to those other people who were
Much of what the committee wanted or has discussed today would fall, I imagine, within the outside the terms of reference of the committee. I'm happy to go and bring that same advice back next week.
It's in the bag.
But Chair, there's obviously a consensus in terms of letting it lie and moving on. So
I think that's the wrong term to use, Chair.
Absolutely.
I think using that term, let it lie, there's no intention to let this lie. We want to see what did actually happen through the whole thing. Using the term "let it lie" is not the way.
What about the way forward, being that we correspond with the serious crime in about 2 weeks' time, to allow them some space in terms, because with what has been indicated, I'm not, you know, again, we're in open session, so I'm not going to indicate what they'd said. But, you know, there was some such, you know, it would feel to me that we may be in a clearer position in a couple of weeks' time in terms of potential correspondence with them.
Perhaps, Chair, after recess, to go back to him again, because he did say 2 to 3 weeks, to give him that, the police that time, so maybe after recess, go back to him.
Yeah, I was avoiding saying anything specific, confidential briefing, so
Yeah.
we can be specific. So
And the other area in this term, and maybe just the turn of phrase, let it lie, the Assembly's not letting it lie. The Standards and Privileges Committee and the Commissioner, whatever the correct title is for the person involved, is investigating it. So it's not let lie. The proper avenues, the proper channels, the proper committee is investigating.
I'm also conscious as well that with the fuller transcript, and I know that that has been forwarded to the PSNI, as I said, I've spoken to them in relation to some of those new issues, I think, raised by that. So, yeah, look, it is now 6:10. We've got quite a significant issue in terms of the agenda to discuss yet. So, my suggestion would be, look, we'll recirculate that advice from previously in terms of the terms of reference of the committee. And then we'll discuss this again next week in terms of the timing around sending a further letter to Serious Crime for an update. And on the back of that, then we can sort of plot a way forward as to what's the best way of getting some further information. Yeah. Okay. Draft minutes of proceedings on 28th of September 2016 is in your packet, page 8 to 13. Are members content that those draft minutes are an accurate record of proceedings? Yeah, and if so, and everybody's in agreement, they will be published on the website. Yeah. Okay, matters arising. Committee for Communities. The committee has requested a copy of the Hansard of the Committee of Communities evidence session on contingency planning for the possible reclassification of housing associations of public bodies. As the session was not covered by Hansard, a link to the meeting was issued to members on Monday. I've also noticed that, you know, there is a research pack on this that has been made available this week in the library. So if members do want some further information, you can pick that up as well. So that should give us a good background or a briefing to that. Summary requests to Department of Finance. The summary table of the request for information Department of Finance is contained in pages 15 to 21 of the main pack. You can see what's outstanding, etc. are we dealing with the finance response in open session? Is that-
Yes, Chair, that's
yeah.
a response to the
So
previous
there
question.
is a response there in terms of the Department of Finance to the NAMA report. It is quite a short response, and I know that because of all of the other issues, members haven't had the opportunity to question the Minister as to why. My understanding is the normal way that this would usually work would be that all of the recommendations would be listed by the Department, and then the Department would give us a response as to whether they're accepting those recommendations, what action they're going to take, or whether they're rejecting those recommendations. And if they're rejecting the recommendations, the reason why. As you can see from the letter that has been presented to us, they don't go into any detail about some of those learning points. So, to raise an issue that we've discussed previously, for example, like the legacy report, referenced the fact that there should be a procedure for nominations, and the fact that officials hadn't been asked for advice, that that is something that the department should take into account and change that procedure. So, like those types of recommendations, that the letter doesn't actually cover what they're intending to do. So I'm not quite sure why. Our suggestion would be that we write again to the department and ask them to respond specifically to the relevant recommendations that fall to the Department of Finance, and to indicate what actions have been taken on the back of that. Is everybody content? It is quite a short letter from them. Okay. On pages 53 to 54 of your tabled papers, there is a list of potential stakeholder stroke witnesses evidence sessions for under non-domestic rating system. So, as requested at the previous meeting, we have looked at a potential list, or a list of potentials for us to discuss and agree. Any members, any views at this point as to who on that list they're particularly interested in? So sorry, members, it's page
54.
54. Page 53 to 54.
Chair, just in relation to the freight and transport, and I understand that that there's been a focus in on the likes of large, but Northern Ireland, they have some fairly major, I would call them haulage contractors. They do have their own body set up, which represents the likes of McBurney's, Woodsides, Montgomery's, who would be key haulier groups who have it.
Is that the freight trans?
Yeah, I think they should be a group that we should be communicating with, because they do come across, because groupage is a big part of our ensuring that our retail market fed, supported and stocked, and as a consequence they are carrying a lot of stock as well.
Yeah, okay, I think that's a good idea. We'll add that to the list. In terms of large retailers, you can see there's 8 there. It's an awful lot in terms of evidence sessions. Anybody got any preference, or I think we had suggested last week that we write to all of them, get some written evidence, and on the back of what we get from them, we'll see who we should invite along. Yeah, presumably the same with the transport can sort of maybe be rolled in a little bit then with the freight organisation. But we're content at this stage to write to everybody on that list. Anybody else wants to add?
Chair, there's one area that I would like maybe a little bit of focus on, maybe could get a report from the Department of Finance in. Has there ever been a study carried out into those who actually are conducting retail business from residential property, using their garage maybe as a distribution point for their eBay shop? And they are having a major impact upon our high street, because some of those guys are able to compete because of no overheads, and are creating a big difficulty for our high street, and as a consequence the Northern Ireland Executive are losing out on revenue that we're not receiving. So a report along that line would be very, very helpful.
I think it's a very relevant one, because if we're going to look afresh at the idea of business rates, and at the moment there's only so many, you know what all of the pieces are on the chessboard, for want of a better analogy, and that what we tend to do is that, look, this is how much we need to raise, and it's just movement around that, and that's very confined and it's very difficult. Whereas, in fact, since rates originally so it was the creation of the concept of rates, and then rates very much being linked to property, we've had this emergence of a completely different marketplace, and that marketplace has a significant and sizable online element, and obviously they don't pay rates unless they have the likes of commercial premises. Right, Phil, did you want to?
Yeah, I think this was a previous mandate. The committee had really seen a level of frustration on that specific issue, and commissioned research to come up with a couple of research papers which might be useful in terms of redistributing those. I mean, I think the difficulty is that there's implications, whereas a lot of companies that do, or a lot of individuals that sell online, are not necessarily incorporated in the same ways. And likewise, as the chairperson says about business premises, and you know, if there was an element of business rates being chargeable on a domestic property, that would have a sliding scale on their domestic rates. So, I mean, I think that certainly there's merit if we was to circulate papers, and perhaps
that grey economy or black economy, if you maybe want to put it, still creates a big problem, because if they're non-corporated, they're not paying income tax either, so therefore their profits are not noticeable on that either.
The rating issue, obviously, when it comes to non-domestic rates, is based on the leasable. There's a property tax on the leasable net annual value of the property, and I think that's one of the difficulties. But certainly, as I say, we could pull out that research.
You're always going to run into the difficulty where if you detach that from the capital aspect of it, then does it become around turnover? Does it become, you know, where it's registered? How do you quantify how much space? The difficulty with that is, and I'm sure the rates people will say this, you know, once you give evidence, is I suppose the balance then between the administrative burden and cost versus what the benefit may be. But there's no doubt that at the moment, if you have an online business selling same goods as a shop, you're massively advantaged, and there hasn't been a way, obviously corporation tax and other taxes, but there hasn't really been a way, I think, an updated way to capture what business rates originally had set out to do for those new style of businesses. So I think it is an issue. I suspect the solution is not going to be an easy one. I think it's definitely worth looking at.
Has any work been undertaken, not maybe just by the Northern Ireland Executive, within other jurisdictions, and by that I mean, you know, GB? I'm sure the same issues are arising there. There's got to have been this has got to have been raised by other, even other assemblies.
And research did look at that, and I think we also actually, in the previous mandate, actually sort of the question is what scope there is or what appetite there is over in GB, but certainly look at that and
okay.
come back with that.
Thank you. Sorry for.
Oh, okay. Well, perhaps a good place to start would be some research then on what happens elsewhere, etc., and can this be captured. Any other suggestions in terms of who to add? I'm just noticing nursing homes aren't on here, and I know that nursing homes, according to the briefing that we received, are exempt, both commercial and charitable, so that might be something that's worth asking for some written briefing from them. I suppose from a commercial point of view, their justification presumably why the exemption should continue to apply, but I think that would be worth getting.
Is there any overarching body from them?
There's independent healthcare providers who represent all of the private sector.
Commercial ones?
Not all.
Well, certainly when I was...
Quite a number that don't contribute to it or don't adhere to it.
Well, they speak, as it were, on behalf of the sector. It's Mrs. Shepherd.
The difficulty being that once you start to impose or look at rates for that, it will ultimately be the Department of Health who will have to fit the bill to pay that rate. So it's...
Well, none of it are commercial. There may be a pass-on cost.
It would be definitely, because they would be looking for an adjustment of the fee. I can tell you. Get it wrong, Jim.
Yeah. Just pass it on through to the client.
And I would say the suggestion about getting written evidence, the suggestion about getting written evidence is in no way suggesting that should happen. But I do think if people are looking at further exemptions or incentives, you know, there is a X amount of money has to be raised. So it's just trying to hear their views and their concerns, and those types of issues that we want to hear about as well. Okay, moving swiftly on then to supportive legislation, SR 2016-359, the rates increase reduction for recreational regulations Northern Ireland 2016. We considered the policy proposals on the 14th and the 21st of September 2016, and we were content The rule is subject to affirmative resolution, and the Department has confirmed that there have been no changes to policy since content since the SL1 was issued. Want to inform members that the examiner of statutory rules who undertakes technical scrutiny of the rules is due to consider this rule in the next report, which is due to be published on 7th of October. So if members are content, any issues raised by that? There's been no changes anyway, and we considered the previous time. So if the committee is content, I'll formally put to you that the committee has considered SR 2016-359, the rates, brackets, increase, reduction for recreational arrendaments, close brackets, regulations, brackets, Northern Ireland, close brackets 2016, and recommends that, subject to the examiner's report. Does it be affirmed by the Assembly? Yes?
Agreed.
Content? Okay. So we're going to move into closed session. No, we're not. There's correspondence at the back on page 36 to 57 of the pack. Any comments? Everybody content? There's a forward work programme on pages 59 to 62. Okay. Any other business before we move into closed session? So just to inform members, just before we do that, then the next meeting is Wednesday, the 12th of October 2016, room 29.
Presumably we'll come into public session again if we make any decisions on the closed session.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, so we're going to move into closed session.
Committee room 29.